try to silence the truth we shout, but we're still here, we're still calling out. Corruption hides behind a badge of name. We light the fire, expose the shame. We're justice seekers, we'll fight the fight for every voice lost in the night. My life mattered is the cry we sing for the ones they tried to bury within. It's just us, we're a movement wide. Together we rise, won't run nor hide. The stories echo, the pain runs deep. For stolen lives we can't just weep. Elected power, but their hearts are cold. We'll bring the truth, let it be told. We're justice seekers, we'll fight the fight for every voice lost in the night. My life mattered is the cry we sing for the ones they tried to bury within. It's just us, we're a movement wide. Together we rise, won't run nor hide. We're justice seekers, we'll fight the fight. The heroes undo the harm. Calling out corruption, we'll stand tall for justice and truth, we'll risk it all. My life mattered is the cry we sing. Together we rise, let freedom ring.
Hello, good evening, social change warriors and justice seekers. I'm Catherine Felton Page, the founder and host of Social Change Warriors episodes on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Friday nights, our live streams, where we are calling out corruption in government and police, and we are standing for victims of homicide and victims of domestic violence homicide and the survivors and their families. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome. If you're new to our channel, you are so welcome here. We are not monetized, so we do not do the super chat thing. I have nothing against it for other channels, but I just choose, well, I can't do it. First of all, we don't have enough people yet, but even if I did, I'm not going to do that route. So we appreciate donations if you choose to make them, but they're only used for program costs. And then the balance of that, which is the majority of it, 80%, goes to our victims' families for help with their cases. And we keep a spreadsheet for every family. We just started doing that, so we're new at this. We used to just be completely non-monetized, no donations, no nothing, just 100% volunteer. But we were requested by some of our loyal subscribers that we should do some type of a donation since we don't do the super chats. And I decided to do that. So we have a Cash App now. I'll put it up at the end of the show. We don't expect any large donations, please. We only would like small ones. We expect nothing, but we appreciate small ones. And like I said, 80% will go to the families. I only need about 20% to cover costs to run this channel. So I don't accept any salary. I'm a complete retired person volunteer. So we're glad to have you. You are welcome here anytime. Wednesdays is our night for what our tagline is now is we swear on Wednesdays. That's our night we call the Angry Bitch Club. And we will talk about anything you want to talk about. We will complain. We will bitch about cases that are just unbelievably horrible, maddening, disgraceful. And we will also call out corruption on Wednesdays too, and we'll call out bad guys who have not been arrested yet for the homicides of their dear departed wives, girlfriends, fiancés. So Wednesdays it's a free for all. You're welcome to come. We have a good time in the sense that we don't put up with crap from people, and we call out the bad guys, and we call out the critics who are nasty, and we call out people on social media who are being nasty to any of our victims or their survivors or their family. So like I said, you can say anything you want to say on Wednesdays, and you're always welcome. Thursdays, here we are tonight, which is calling out corruption. We focus on cases that have police doing not good things. Dirty cops involved, possibly government involved that's not right, that shouldn't be there. They should be unelected in your communities. And we're also trying to solve homicides that have no bad guy arrested. Why is that, right? How do we not arrest bad guys when there is a person that has lost their life? It was clearly a homicide, clearly the M word. YouTube doesn't like me to say murder, but I can say it because I'm not monetized, but I will respect them. And we want to know who took that person's life, who has harmed this person, who has taken them from this planet, grieving. Their family will be grieving forever and eternity. And as community members, we have a place to say something about this. We've been quiet for too long in most of our communities because we're so afraid of retaliation, which is rightfully so. It is scary. It's scary to think you could be retaliated against because you're trying to stand for a family who's lost their loved one and the police aren't solving their crime. And sometimes it's involving friends of the police or someone the police knows or a business that the police knows where the crime happened at. It can be a number of things, but that's what we're doing on Thursday nights. We're calling it out. As a community, we're not standing for it anymore. And now we have little pockets of social change warriors communities all over the country, the families and the friends of the loved ones of those that we are advocating for. So we currently have 13, and unfortunately, our newest death that we have to advocate for is a young man out of South Carolina. And I'll speak about him at the end of the show tonight because we're going to meet some of his family next Thursday and talk about the crime and corruption going on in the same county, believe it or not, as the Murdaugh case. So this is kind of scary stuff because there's a lot of nefarious behavior that goes on in that area of the country. So now we have another unsolved homicide where this young man was blamed for his own death. It's shocking to me how many of the victims we're currently advocating for have been blamed for their own passing. Sandra Birchmore, Ellen Greenberg, now this young man that I'll introduce you tonight at the end of the show. It's just utterly unbelievable. And then we have Sandra Birchmore, and we're going to meet Mizzy here in about 2 seconds, and she's going to tell you about the Sandra Birchmore passing and how she was framed for her own death by a police officer. So a lot of you that have been with me and subscribed to our channel know about this because we've talked about Sandra Birchmore. We've advocated for her since I started the channel in late July. So glad to have all of you here. Let me bring Mizzy up to the stage and we will get to know her. Hi there, my friend.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining Social Change Warriors tonight, calling out corruption. We so appreciate having you.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. I've actually wanted you here for a long time because I feel that you and I have a lot in common. We both have the ability to stand our ground and to speak our mind. And there's not a lot of people that can do that. First of all, it's a very hard thing to do. And there's a lot of people that want to do it, but they're very much afraid of retaliation. And I respect that. I would never want people to put themselves in harm's way or do something that doesn't feel organically safe for them to do. So when I first ran across you, literally when I started following Sandra Birchmore's case, probably last winter already. And I heard of it when it first happened. And then I heard it was, ruled an unaliving of herself. And I never thought that made sense to me. And I started digging in, and then I started following you, and I'm like, wow, who is this lady? She's amazing. And I assumed, wrongfully so, that you were her sister or her family. So Mizzy, introduce yourselves to our social change warriors and to our justice seekers and tell us where you're from, a little bit about yourself, and how did you get into this position of lead advocate for Sandra Birchmore?
Yeah, I'm a New England-based content creator. I'm about 45 minutes outside Boston. I have a channel too. My show is called The Mixed Girl on a Mixed Up World. Yes. And I was covering cases of I would interview families of loved ones whose family was murdered, and a lot of times they were kind of the same thing what you were just talking about, that they were blamed for their death, or the police didn't investigate the case properly, or there was some sort of corruption in the case. Because I've been wanting to work on police corruption, but I started doing it this way because it was a different form of police corruption. It wasn't this, it wasn't like, police beating somebody on the streets, or,
Right.
giving, planting evidence or anything like that. This was more of, a family member who can't get justice for their loved one because the police are actively impeding that. And that's what I was doing. And I saw Sandra's case on the news. It was when the Stoughton police report came out, and I was irate. I was screaming at my TV, like, what the heck is going on in Stoughton? That's the nicest way for me to say it, because there was a lot of swears in there. And then her friend spoke, and that's when she said that Sandra wasn't alive. And then they said, yeah, that she killed herself. And I was like, no, she didn't. And I said, your friend did not kill herself. And I started looking into the case, but because I was working on other cases, I wasn't able to jump into Sandra's case. And over the next few months, I would, especially when I would go to bed, I would, doom scroll and look her case up. And I was like, I thought I was losing my mind because it was not in the news at all. There was like a few articles here and there, but it wasn't. I thought it was insanity that this young woman, was abused by 3 police officers. Even if you remove her death, just the first section of the crime, was abused, and this case was in the news for like 2 days.
And she was more than abused. She was SA'd. She was absolutely SA'd, and there's no doubt about that in my mind at all. So
she was groomed, and then yes. Yeah. And I'm going to have to try to say SA, because on my channel, I let it rip. I don't care.
Well, I normally do too, but I wasn't sure how comfortable you were. So I always try to err on the side of caution when I first meet people. I
always try to let whatever the person whose channel I'm going on, because I'm like you, I'm not monetized. So it doesn't matter if what I say.
It's simple, audience. It's sexual assault. That's what it is. When a woman doesn't give permission for a man to have sex with her, that is rape and sexual assault. It's rape if you're under a certain age, and it's sexual assault.
It was statutory. It was statutory because it started when she was 15.
Exactly. I don't know the ages of all the states, because I know it's different in every state what the age of consent is. But
16 in Massachusetts.
16 in Massachusetts. And we believe this started when she was 15.
15. Correct? And even, a lot of people get it twisted that even though she was 23 when she was murdered, people don't comprehend that she was groomed from the age of 12.
Exactly.
The grooming continued into when she was 23. I would say when she, in the late 2021, 2021, she was starting to feel like she had a little power. And that I think she felt like she was turning the tide a little bit on him. She was starting to learn how to manipulate back, but it started when you're a person who is groomed. You don't just like wake up one day and say I'm a whole person, and that none of the mental anguish that I went through at the age of 12 on stops there. It continues.
Exactly.
So
exactly. And she's being taught to manipulate, by master manipulators. So she has
absolutely
master manipulators are actually her role models now, because they've groomed her into that mental state that they can do no wrong, that they are the ones that she needs to look up to. And that's exactly what groomers do to 12, 13, and 14.
Yes. And you got to understand that Robert Devine is like the king of master manipulators.
Oh, I believe you. I knew it from the minute you posted about him. Yes.
He put all the knowledge into these boys. And when I say, I'm saying boys because it's, I was told by one of his victims that he groomed the Farwells. And this young woman, she was in the police explorers with the Farwell brothers when they were teenagers. So he took them under his wing and taught them everything he knew. And 10 years later, because this happened in 2021, 2022.
Right.
I mean, and they were, she was only around at 21, 22, 2001 and 2002.
Right.
Luckily, she made a mistake that really pissed off Divine, and he kicked her to the curb.
Right.
It saved her from going down the direction that Sandra went down. And she still lives with those scars of what happened. So, he taught the Farwell brothers how to be. So
I agreed with you, by the way, from day one, when I first heard about the case, because for years I've been following true crime. I retired from the police force after a neck injury. Well, not right away, but several years later when my neck did not continue to heal properly. So I've always been interested in true crime because of my background in police work. And my mother worked for the Department of Justice in Wisconsin most of my whole life. So I always was involved in some type of justice for others. And I had a lot of friends that were police officers. So I've started following this case pretty early on, but then, like you said, it disappeared from the media. They ruled it an unaliving of herself, and then it was just gone. And when John O'Keefe, died, and that case came into prominence, I was wondering, why isn't anybody talking about Sandra Birchmore? This is literally 20 minutes away, right? Maximum from Canton, Stoughton to Canton.
Well, yeah, no, they're not even 20 minutes away. They're right up against each other.
Wow. Okay.
Sandra lived when she died, she lived in Canton. But when you pull out of the driveway of her apartment building, I can't remember if it's I think it's to the right. There's literally a sign that says, "Welcome to Stoughton."
Oh, okay. Wow.
Like I said, I don't remember if it's to the right or the left, but when you pull out of there, that's how close they,
And a lot of time, where I live here in the Daytona Beach area, same thing. You go from Ormond to Ormond to Holly Hill to Daytona to South Daytona to Port Orange, and you just go boom, 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 boom. And you never know you've left one and you started the other if it wasn't for those little welcome signs. And
also in Canton and Stoughton, there are some streets that you're you're driving down the street and you're like, oh, you're in Canton. And then a minute up the road, oh, I'm in Stoughton. And then a minute up the road, you're back in Canton. So it's one of those things where they're they're so close together. But so Sandra did grow up in Stoughton. She only lived in Canton for 2 months. She moved there early December. But to go back to how I really jumped into this case, my friend Sarah, who is her son, Brandon Embry, who was murdered.
Yes.
She's been fighting for her son. She's a warrior. She asked me one day, it was early 2023.
Okay.
And she goes, what's up with that Sandra Birchmore case? And she lives in North Carolina. And she's the first case I worked on, and similar type deal things. He was blamed for his case like Sandra was,
Right.
She says, what's up with that Sandra Birchmore case? And I was like, taken back. I go, how do you know about this case?
Right.
I was shocked. She's in North Carolina. Most people that lived in Stoughton didn't even know about her case.
Right.
Which is sad. Most people in Canton didn't know about her case. So she said the guys from the case did a podcast. The case podcast season 2 was all about Sandra. And I said, I've been looking into that case, but I haven't done a deep dive. And she said, let's do a deep dive. And I said, let's do it. So her and I teamed up for a couple weeks, and we just started looking at little things she was looking into how much did a teacher's assistant make in the Sharon area, because that's where she worked. And I did a virtual tour of her apartment to find out what kind of doorknobs they were. They aren't doorknobs, they're handles, the kind you pull down. We were looking to see how big the apartments are, so if the bedroom was on one side, is the bedroom up against a living room, so that might be why a neighbor didn't hear it. I have more on that, so remind me to go back to that.
I'll write that down right now. Yeah, I was just about to take some notes because some of this I don't know about, and it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, and then so we just started and then I started reading the reports. I put in a bunch of FOIA requests, and her and I were all in for a few weeks. And she said, you know what, Mizzy, I got to get back to Brandon's case. Because she's trying to do this on her son's case.
Right.
And she said, I got to get back to Brandon's case, because we were shocked that there wasn't even a Facebook page, like even a memorial Facebook page, never mind a Facebook page that's fighting for justice. And she said, if you make the Facebook page, I'll do a petition, because she knew she could do a petition. She could run the petition, because that you just put up put up a picture of her every few months, or
right.
An update. It's not that hard to do a petition, but running a Facebook page, a group, it's a lot of work.
Timely, yes.
So she said, will you do that? And I like to say that I took a beat and I took a deep breath, because I knew if I took it on, I was going to have to take it on. I wouldn't be able to. I wasn't going to be able to do I wasn't going to be able to do my interviews anymore. I'm disabled, and so I have ailments where, like, I suffer from severe migraines. And I knew, and when I was doing canned edits, I wasn't doing live streams. So it was something that would take me, a month and a half to edit a video, where it would take somebody else a couple days or a day. So I knew I wasn't going to
relate to this. I have chronic pain too, and other issues now, that doing this type of work, advocating for people that are no longer with us and their distraught family members, it takes a lot out of me every week. And I have some weeks where I go down pretty quick. My chronic fatigue just goes bam. Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand that when you have these type of autoimmune disorders and migraines, especially. I have neck headaches, which are very similar to migraines. It's because of all the damage in my neck. So they just come out of nowhere. And then that affects your ability to read and research and live stream. So I understand completely. That's why, to me, you are an extra superhero, because you battle your own health issues, and then you're still trying to help families of those that have passed and don't have justice. And that it's just really commendable, Mizzy, what you've done with Sandra.
I looked at it because I started my channel in the wake of George Floyd, and because I wanted to show people, I wanted people to communicate. So I wanted people to come on and tell their story. Yeah. And then I transitioned to interviewing family. I was like, I want to show policing in a different way. Mm-hmm. I had already interviewed like 10, 12 people. And I was like, I want to show policing in a different way. And that's how I started doing that. And, I have fibromyalgia, and I have, so it's the same as chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah, very similar symptoms.
Yeah. Yep. And I have arthritis in my neck, so I get cervical migraines. I get other migraines too.
That's what I get too, girl. Yeah. See, we are simpatico in more ways than we knew.
So, running the page was just when you take the Facebook group, that was easy for me, because we didn't have, at that point, we didn't have 1 million followers. I mean, we don't have 1 million followers now, but we were like trying to get followers. I made my family and friends come join just so we would look like we had people.
Yes. I had to do the same thing at the beginning when I started the live channel in August. Yeah. I had the people that had been with me for pre-recordeds that I've been doing for 5 years, but that was mostly in the realm of social workers and community social work. And to jump into this true crime live stream thing, I didn't really know what I was getting myself in for. Yeah. I really didn't. I just decided, if I don't just jump in and do it, I'll never do it. So I had a passion in my mind for it, but I'd never experienced what live streaming was like, or what the world is like, the group of people that live stream. It's been a lot. It's been a lot.
Yeah, I had done a couple live streams, so I was okay with doing the live streams. It was just getting the audience and I wasn't going to be able to do that, because when you're trying to build like a YouTube channel, you have to constantly be putting out stuff, and I just can't, Right. So I knew once I took on Sandra's case, I was going to have to like jump in with, 10 toes down. And that's what I did. And I messaged before that. I had messaged everybody when Sarah and I were looking at digging into the case. I said, I'm going to see if I can reach out to some family members. And my initial thing was maybe I can get somebody to come on my channel and I can interview them so we can get her case out that way.
Yeah.
And I messaged everybody that Sandra's page is locked, so only friends and family can see it, but you can see some photos. It wasn't fully 100% locked.
Right.
So I went in every photo and I messaged everybody who was either tagged or commented. And I messaged Barb, her cousin, and I messaged probably about 15 people and or more. And Barb is the only one who got back to me. And I feel like she was the person who was meant to get back to me. She was still working, but she was about to retire. She was living on the West Coast. She moved out to the East Coast, not to about 8 months after we started. So it ended up being like perfect. Like it was just perfect timing, like perfect synergy. Barb and I, that's who's in the chat.
That's what I was just about to ask you. Is that whose messages I'm putting up? So I have to just interrupt for 2 seconds. I have to make one comment to my friend and subscriber, Vermont Bread. I wanted you to know that I think it was last week, one of the haters was calling you a bot. And I just sat there on, in my desk here, drinking my tea, reading Twitter X going, oh my gosh, Twitter X just gets worse and worse by the day.
Calling me a bot?
No, they were calling Vermont Breadsmith a bot.
Oh, I was like, calling me a bot.
No, you didn't get called a bot. It's Vermont Breadsmith was called a bot the other day on Twitter X, and I'm sure he or she will attest to that if you can write it. And I don't remember who it was now, Vermont Breadsmith, because I've got a lot of haters that come after me on Twitter X because of different stances I've taken throughout the Karen Reed trial, and I'm very outspoken, and I don't just go with the flow. Like if I see something and I don't like it, I'm going to say something. You don't have to like it, what I say, and I don't have to like what you say, but I'll say it. And I do not like all the hate and the name calling and making fun of people's weight, their hair, their color, their sexual orientation. And for all of you that gave me a hack a couple weeks ago, I'll wear purple if I damn well please to wear purple. I was actually accused of being transgender on X by a person who tells me that she will never wear purple because only transgender people wear purple. And I wrote him back and said, have you lost your mind? That's utterly ridiculous. And I said, and the bottom line is, who cares anyway? Colors are here for all of us to enjoy. The rainbow is a gift from God, and whatever color I choose to wear, blue for Sandra, blue to support my fellow good cops, purple to support domestic violence victims, or anybody that I choose to say purple. This is my high school colors too, by the way. I was just kind of taken aback. I mean, I've dealt with heat since I started live streaming, and I try to ignore most of it, but this one really touched me differently because I don't care for people that are biased, first of all. That's always been an issue for me. Ever since I was a small child, I remember asking my mom once, I was probably 5, I think it was preschool, and there were kids picking on this disabled child that was in our classroom, and I didn't understand it. Like, I'm so lucky that my DNA blessed me with not ever feeling those feelings towards others. And so it's been a thing since I was little to stand up for people. I guess it's just you're born a certain way, and I was born that way. So I would go up to these bully kids and say, leave, I don't remember her name anymore, but I would say, leave her alone. Or I would go to the teacher and say, why are they doing this to her? And of course they called me redhead freckle face, but that's just words. That's just bullying. They were being really, really aggressively mean to this child because she was disabled. And then I moved to Milwaukee as a child, and I was in a multiracial school that had a disability wing, they called it, where that's what they called it. All the kids that had hearing issues, whether they were seeing issues, if they were, disabled, challenged mentally, they were down one section of the school, but some of them were allowed to be in our classrooms because this was a very progressive Milwaukee public school back in the day. This was in the 70s. And so we were multiracial, and I was so lucky that I got to go to school there for 5 years because I got to be around kids from different nationalities, and this disability wing, I got to know kids that had severe disabilities, some that had minor disabilities. And it just makes you a more well-rounded person if you can grow up around people that are different than you, that aren't the same as you. And not everybody gets that chance, but everybody has that chance at some point in their life to make sure they insert themselves around others that are different from them. So when I'm on Twitter X and I'm seeing all this hate towards lesbians, gays, transgenders, I'm like, what is wrong with people? What kind of world are we living in where people think they have the right to judge others' choices for their own personal life? It's always bothered me. It will continue. So this week, when that person came at me for wearing purple, I'm like, well, first of all, you must come to my live streams if you know I wear purple a lot, because I do wear purple a lot. I love it. It's my favorite color. And so you obviously, because I don't, where else do you see me? I mean, I don't have my purple hat or my purple blouse that I usually wear on Wednesdays for domestic violence survivors and victims. I don't have that in a picture. So I'm thinking, well, this person must be, spooking around on my lives on Wednesdays and Thursdays. So I wanted to say something to all of you that are here live and that are out there on the replay. Just be good humans. It's not that hard to be kind. It's not that hard to not be judgmental of other people. We all live on this planet. We were all blessed to be here by whatever you believe got us here. And whether we choose to wear purple or green or blue or red, or we choose to fly the LBT, Q flag out in front of our homes because we support all people of any race, religion, color, sexual orientation, that's our place. That's our right. If I have a bumper sticker on my car that you don't like, get over it. This is America. I can have any bumper sticker I want on my car. I can be a Democrat one day and a Republican the next if I choose. I can be an independent. I can say I don't align with any political party. We are bipartisan on Social Change Warriors, but you would not believe during the election the people that came at me because I had an opinion. And people were telling me, Kat, you can't say that on here. No one will come to your channel. No one will stand with you if you tell them, about politics. And I said, well, listen, I'll talk about politics on Tuesdays. I won't talk about politics on Wednesdays, Thursdays, or Fridays, but I'm not going to not be me. And if you don't like me just because of my political persuasion this 4 years or the next 4 years, or because I choose to care about everyone, regardless of where they live or what church they go to or what color their skin is or how they vote, that's on you. That's not on me. Social Change Warriors is not a me channel. It's a we channel. We're here to support victims of homicide, domestic violence homicide, and stand against corruption. And that's exactly what Mizzy's doing in her area, neck of the woods in Massachusetts. And that's what I'm doing when I'm in Florida or when I'm in Wisconsin. And now we have advocates popping up all over the country that are supporting us because people want to get involved, Mizzy. People want to be a community. And that's what we have to get more of. We cannot have all this division because we have to call out corruption as a team. And if we're constantly fighting amongst each other over things we shouldn't be fighting about, and that's what's happening in the Karen Reed movement right now, Mizzy. I don't know if you've seen what's going on again now. It's always something every week. And it gets very discouraging. And then that draws attention away from Karen and from Justice for John, Justice for Sandra Birchmore, because all these same cops are involved.
Yep. That's why it's hard for me to not. If I wasn't doing Sandra, I would be more vocal with a lot of things. But because I'm her advocate and people look at me, I try to separate them, on my personal stuff. Like I have a Twitter page or X, whatever you want to call it, for myself, for Mizzy. And that's where I put my stuff. I don't even post like a lot of, the only time I really say stuff about that has to do with Karen Reed on Sandra's page is very, very little. Because it's about Sandra, but like you said, the they're the same cops. It's the same Michael Morrissey's office, those type of things. And I try to keep everything else on, so it's under my opinion. But like, it's weird being the spokesperson for somebody else, not a spokesperson for like because before I was like kind of a spokesperson for different people. It was more of like I'm going against police corruption, and how I'm going to show you how. And this person is going to tell you about their loved one, this person, this one. But I'm like the face of the Justice for Sandra Birchmore movement. Yeah. So I do bite my tongue a lot because I joke, Barb is like the little angel on my shoulder because, and I hate to say I'm glad that I'm sick, but I'm glad that I'm sick while I'm doing this because it's my natural instinct to like kick a door in. That's my personality. I've got a very strong personality.
Yes,
but I calm down a lot being sick. You know, I've had to because, as you know, with the stuff that we have, if you do too much, you're going to be taking a nap. And if, you know, I have stuff to do that day, I can't take a nap, you know, so, you know, so I joke and say, Barb is the little angel and I'm like the devil on my shoulder. So it's like, you know.
Yeah, well, this is wonderful. I would love to meet Barbara someday. I'm following along and putting up all your comments. I usually read all your comments when I don't have a guest, but when I have a guest, I want Mizzy to be talking. I don't want to be talking that much. So in a moment, we'll take a break and I will read a few of your comments, but I'm putting them all up because I like replay to see our exchanges and what we're talking about, because that encourages more people to want to come live. And I mean, it's a busy world and I realize that. So I appreciate all of you on the replay. Trust me, I do. But it does help when we have a live audience, because then we can bounce things off with each other and talk about the case and try to figure things out together. And sometimes it just helps to just crab about it together and lament together about just the atrocity of what happened to Sandra Birchmore. I mean, for me as a former police officer, there's nothing worse than dirty cops. I absolutely detest them. And I try not to use the word hate because hate's a very strong word. And I don't really love that word. I don't know that it really tells or encompasses what that feeling is. I've always liked the word detest because it really sounds like, you know, you are a disgusting individual. And the sad part about this Robert character, right, is he's still out there walking around free and clear as a bird. And I agree with you 100% that he is an evil, evil man. And I can say that because it's my opinion. And it's based on evidence. It's based on Sandra's own evidence. I mean, isn't it interesting that Sandra had the presence of mind to have a diary?
Yeah.
And to actually record things that she thought could possibly happen to her and possibly be able to call out. I mean, they don't even write crime books like that sometimes. They're not even nearly as good as what Sandra did to protect herself. She thought she was. I just wish for her own sweet self that she could have found somebody else to trust just a little sooner so that she could have prevented this horrible, horrific unaliving that happened to her.
I hate saying this, but I think with Sandra's story, I think it was always going to go this way because there were three people who had their livelihoods, their life, and everything to protect. And Sandra had the ability to take all three of them down. So if it wasn't Matthew, sadly, I think it would have been one of the other two, you know.
I mean, it's very hard sometimes for the general public who's never really been around, policing or police or investigative work or private investigators or the justice system to really comprehend that when people have done an evil deed and they know they did it and they're getting away with it and they get this like inner strength. It's like this narcissism ego where they think they're never going to get caught. And then all of a sudden something happens and then that whole script flips. And that is when they become super dangerous. And it's the same with domestic violence, which in every essence, Sandra was a domestic violence victim because she was sexually involved with these men. So that
she considered Matthew her boyfriend. She considered him, even though I don't think she fully understood what a boyfriend really was because of the grooming. But, you know, we did last October, we did a domestic violence ceremony for her on the steps of the Stoughton Police Department. Yes. You know, her case is like a bunch of different cases all wrapped up in one.
Oh, it most certainly is. I mean, it started out as, grooming of a child. Then it went into sexual assault of a child, statutory rape of a child. Then it continued into domestic abuse, verbal, taunting, stalking. I mean, everything you can imagine that was going on, she experienced. And how do you expect anybody who's that young to come out of that okay? I mean, it's just utterly despicable and disgusting. And I do believe you're right. I think that Divine, how do we pronounce his name?
Divine.
I think Divine is a very sick human being. And what I'm really concerned about too is who else is out there. It can't just be Sandra. I've never thought it was just Sandra. There's no way they just did this to one person.
Well, there is the young woman, Ashley, who
Yes.
I only say her name because she did step into the light. She was in the Boston Globe article. There's a photo of her and her mother. So I'm not like putting her name out there without
right.
being out there. I kept her name private for a long time. Yeah. And Robert, William Farwell also, but he groomed Ashley when she was in the Explorers group. And she actually was part of the after school program that he ran in the junior high school. Because he was when he was in his early career, he was a SRR officer.
Now what age group is she in? Older or younger than Sandra?
She's older than Sandra.
Okay, so that she was the first. Well, not necessarily. I mean, this is, and people will ask me this all the time. Like they asked me this with domestic violence when I worked in the domestic violence shelters in Los Angeles. Why do women stay? Why don't they leave their abusive husband? It's their fault that they stayed. And it's crazy that people think that way, first of all, because you can never, ever make a decision or have an opinion on something that someone should or shouldn't do unless it's happened to you and you know exactly what that feels like. Because we can't possibly know unless you have been in a situation of domestic violence where you are literally yelled at, put down, demeaned, because most domestic violence abusers don't just go from A to Z. They go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, all the way. So they start
don't
out.
Call it grooming, really, but it is a form of grooming. It's the gaslighting, the coercive control. It's very similar to what we consider grooming. It's
Absolutely.
Just it's under the domestic violence umbrella, not as a child being groomed. I mean, it's similar to what a groomed child, there's the love bombing at the beginning of the relationships. And then also when they start abusing a woman, physically or even verbally, mentally, then they do the love bombing again, where it's like, oh, I'm so sorry, bringing the flowers, the candy, and apology gifts. I'll never do it again. And then the cycle keeps happening.
Yes. So it's the wheel of violence that Ellen Pence came up with back in the 80s. And I'm going to talk about that one of these Wednesdays, because a lot of people don't know about Ellen Pence and all of her work. She was really big on rehabilitation for men that are domestic abusers, because she did a lot of research and found that many men that have violent tempers and control issues with their women is because they were abused as children. So it's just this vicious circle that perpetrates. And then you've got kids in the home seeing this behavior. Yeah. And then the kids are seeing this just like that person saw it. It's really a sad thing, but she dedicated her life to rehabilitation and rehabilitating men that were domestic violence abusers. And a lot of people were critical of her, but I do believe that rehabilitation is possible for certain people, depending on maybe for some people. Depending on the work they want to do and what they want to put into it, what they're willing to put into it. But there's just certain people that are so mentally deranged that
it depends on what their psychopathy is, because if they're a narcissist or if they're a psychopath, they're probably not going to be able to be rehabilitated. But if they're just somebody who came from a broken home and they it was all learned behavior, they might be able to be rehabilitated, but it's something that they would have to continue to work on for the rest of their life, because it's easy to backslide and go into those same habits.
It's lifelong. Once you're dedicated to saying, if a man is dedicated to saying, I will never hit another woman, I will never ever touch another woman, that is a lifelong therapy that will have to take place, and lifelong constant behavior modification, of your own actions and how you react to things that don't go your way and how you handle your anger management. Those are all lifelong therapy. And the narcissism is a really tricky thing because, we didn't know that much about it, and they're learning more and more about it, studying more about it all the time. And it's a combination of where they believe some people are just born with that personality trait, like people are born with personality disorders.
Yeah.
Narcissism is a personality disorder, and you can actually be born with it, but it is also a learned behavior.
Yes.
It's a learned behavior for trauma. So if you go through trauma as a child, you can develop narcissistic personality disorder, and it is a rough one. Guys, I mean, if you've ever been friends with someone, or if you've ever been in a relationship with someone, it is probably one of the hardest disorders. I mean, I've worked with people that had bipolar and medicated, and with counseling, people that have bipolarism, they can live normal lives. But narcissism is a very scary disorder because, number one, the person will not recognize that they have it. They will not recognize that anything they're doing is wrong because their inner person is so damaged, and that protection shield they had to put up from the trauma they suffered as either a child or a teenager or a young adult is so high. And then it continues to manifest. It continues to manifest. Once they start doing all these actions, they get power from that. So they get power from gaslighting. They get power from lying about you. They get power from being powerful.
Yep.
And it's a nasty disorder, and everybody I've ever talked to about it. And when I did my master's degree at USC and we had to spend semesters on these different disorders, almost every professor I had and every psychologist and psychiatrist that came in to guest speak told us that it is not curable, that it can be managed if the person will look in the mirror and admit what they have and go to counseling and take the counseling advice, take the advice of how to manage your personality disorder. But if you won't be willing to say to yourself, I have a sugar problem, or I have a drinking problem, if you can't say I have this, then you cannot be rehabilitated. It's just that simple. And so when we're dealing with deviant behavior sexually by men who go after 12, 13, 14-year-old children and do the things that these men did in Stoughton, that is deviant behavior. And that's associated with a sexually deviant narcissist. Yeah. So that's there's just narcissism where the person's basically an asshole. I'm sure you've called many narcissists an asshole and you just didn't know they were a narcissist. And I'm sure there's some assholes who aren't narcissists. They're just jerks. And they get pinned with that. And that happens because it's a close call with someone who's just a downright jerk versus someone who actually is a clinical narcissist. Only a psychiatrist, right? Only a psychiatrist and psychologist can sit you down for weeks and let you know if they believe that's what you are based on answers to questions and your behavior and things that you share with them. And to get a narcissist even in the chair of a psychiatrist or a psychologist is almost impossible.
Yeah, because they don't believe they think they're right. And
they won't go. And as someone that I was formerly involved with told me once, I like myself the way I am, Catherine.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that? All you can do is have the courage, even if you love this person, to go and get out, because they will continue to gaslight you, abuse you, put you down in front of your family, rip on you, make fun of you. It's their job. That's their job, to put themselves up here and to put you down here. That's all they care about. And they look like the best person to the neighbors. The neighbors, their coworkers think they are the best thing since sliced bread. They'll never really see it. Only the people in the home. What happens behind closed doors is where the narcissist thrives with all of his anger and meanness. He doesn't show that on the outside, or she. Women can be narcissists as well. Women can be abusive to their husbands. 82% of women that are unalived by someone they know. And of that percentage, 65% of it is either the husband, the fiance, the boyfriend, or an ex. That is an alarming number. That's an epidemic in our country. And Mizzy, just since we booked this together tonight, I have been told about either private messaged, DM'd, or called about 6 more women who have passed away just since we booked this together.
Wow.
Just to me, telling me about it because they want to know if I want to look into their cases. And that isn't even, that's probably an eighth of what's actually happened in the last week, of women that have actually passed away in the last week at the hands of their boyfriend, husband, or significant other.
Yeah.
It's very scary.
And to go along with that, that kind of circles back to Sandra's case. That's why it made it so unusual that she would have done this to herself, is most pregnant women, the biggest, one of the second highest comorbidity for pregnant women is being murdered by their loved one. I believe it was overpassed by something else. I cannot remember the other one, but for the longest, it was being unalived by their loved one.
Yes.
And
yes,
it's
exactly.
such a low percentage of pregnant women who unalive themselves.
That's my pup. Sorry about that.
Oh, don't worry about that.
He's deciding to
dog.
Yeah,
I have to lock her downstairs.
But you are totally right about that. The most dangerous time for a woman who's in a domestic violence relationship is when she's pregnant.
Yep.
Or when she tells them she's leaving.
Yes. Those two. And then also for pregnant women, there's such a low percentage of pregnant women who unalive themselves. That's another reason why Sandra's case was so unbelievable, that she did this to herself, especially. And to top it off, Sandra was like, she wanted to be pregnant so much. She absolutely wanted this child. She wouldn't have done this to herself being pregnant, because this is all she wanted. She didn't need him. She was telling people, I don't need him in my life. Even though she was desperately wanting for him to sign the birth certificate, she didn't need him. She was making plans that were for with or without him, so she didn't need him. So it is very, like, it's, it might be something like as low as 0.1%. I don't know, because I looked it up a long time ago. So
yeah, I've looked it up too with different articles I've written and papers I've written about domestic violence, but the numbers are very high for the amount of pregnant women. And it's almost hard to even fathom, like, the fact that a man would even hurt his wife or his fiance or his girlfriend or his ex and actually kill them is hard to fathom. But when they're pregnant, it's even more hard to even understand. And so Sarah Ebersol is the young mother that I've been advocating for with her sister Michelle. They're just about a county over from me, in Marion County, Florida. And she went missing 2 years ago, March the 3rd, 2023. And when she was pregnant with her child, Cora, the father of the child tried to hurt her pretty bad. He roughed her up pretty bad, and she called the police, and Michelle was involved, her sister. And that was one of the first times that he actually laid hands on her. Prior to that, he had groomed her from age 15. He was in his 30s, and he had groomed her from age 15. He would stalk her outside of her high school and follow her around. And then he had sex with her when she was 15 or 16. I don't recall the exact age, but that happened. And then he continued to be around her and follow her, and then ended up having her live with him and travel around with him. A very nefarious character, always getting in trouble. Lots of police reports for losing his temper and violence. And then she gets pregnant with this little one. And then he tries to harm her. And then he proceeds to continue to stalk her after she breaks up with him and has the child. And of course, the courts in their wisdom make her have joint custody with this stalker and abuser. And then it just goes on from there. And the list is so long. And I've been live streaming about her on Wednesdays. Where is Sarah Ebersol? And it has all the classic signs that he is the one that unalived her. But no one can find her. Yeah. She's missing. And so, and the police handled the case so poorly. I'm so sorry, Marion County Sheriffs, but you did. You treated it like she was just some girl who dances at an exotic club and decided to disappear and just go off on a bender somewhere and not tell anybody, which she had absolutely no history of doing. She always kept in touch with her sister. She kept in touch with her friends. She had a roommate who she was responsible for the dogs when the roommate wasn't there. She had absolutely no history of just going, goodbye, I'll see ya, and not telling anybody. So they did not even try to get interviews with these two main persons of interest for weeks and weeks after she was missing. So much evidence was delayed, and the case, it's just been a nightmare for her family and her sister and all of I said tonight, Sandra's soldiers. I'm borrowing that from Michelle, because Michelle calls her sisters advocates Sarah's soldiers. And it's just it's heartbreaking, because we know that the odds that she's still alive are very, very, very low.
Yeah.
So the odds that somebody has had her all this time, who would that be? It's a very sad case, but it has a lot of similarities to Sandra, because Sarah was groomed from a very young age by this older man, and it wasn't caught by the family. And then he continued to have her under his thumb all those years with domestic violence and stalking. And he would get access to her social media and her email, and he would demand that she let him have the passwords for everything, or he threatened to keep the child from her. I mean, it was just classic, psychopath domestic violence behavior for years.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Sandra was under. She was under this classic form of domestic violence. Even though they weren't living in the same house, it was still a domestic violence that was put on Sandra Birchmore.
Yeah. And people need to understand, it's not just him, it was two other men too, and other men. There's so you can't say it's this kind of case, because it also involves that it's like there's so many different aspects of Sandra's case that make it like insane. Like, she was groomed by them, and then he started at 15, and then they came along and started doing this also. And then it turns into like the S&M aspect of their relationship,
Right. I kind of forgot about that piece. He has that very violent, I don't know. I don't like the word quirky doesn't suit it, because it's too violent and too nasty for that. It's just,
the S&M. And the thing is, like, Barb and I, we didn't know that was part of the, part of it till a few months before he was arrested. I always suspected. Mm-hmm. I had a feeling.
Yeah.
I always suspected this is how he was able to kill her.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have been scared, because this was something that she was used to going on. And then, oh no, this is different. There had to have been a turn where it was different.
Right.
And I suspected that's how, and what happened to her was pretty close to what my imagination was thinking.
Yeah, me too.
But it's, there's so, like, there's Divine, who's this creepy old man aspect of it. And then there's his brother, William, who was the one introducing her to other men. That becomes into the trafficking, because she was being trafficked. If they're using her to meet, introduce her to other men, that's trafficking.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And
that's the same definition of it. Yeah.
And the thing is, like, the part that really made me say, oh, I really do think this is trafficking, was when I found out that he was looking himself up in the CJIS system. He looked himself up 24 times.
How'd you find that out?
It's in the Stoughton police report.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He looked himself up, and actually that's how he lost his license to operate as a police officer, because he violated the CJIS system.
Huh.
Yeah. 24 times. Why would a police officer need to look themselves? And he looked her up twice, but themselves up 24 times, because they're trying to monitor if there's anything going on where his name's being put into the system.
Right. Exactly.
He's trying to monitor if there's anything going on with him, because there's no reason for a police officer to look themselves up. None
No.
at all.
No.
So that was when I really said, that's when it really clicked with me that,
Right.
oh, when Sarah and I were looking into it, we both thought that was possibly what was going on. And then we said, oh, when I clipped her that, I was like, I really do think he was trafficking her. And then we find, there's Josh Heel. He introduced her to Josh Heel. He introduced her to an Army recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and who else? Who else is there? So,
well, there's more. We don't know that these are the 4 we know of right now. Now, what is going on with Josh Heel? Do you have any update on him?
He's his it's kind of funny in a sense. The police chief of his old police station, the Abington police station,
Yes.
police department, is a former Stoughton police officer. He was a sergeant over in Stoughton, and he just became the police chief in Abington, and he put his name into the post commission. So he might lose his license to operate, but he is going to be a big witness in the FBI and DOJ's case against Matthew Farwell.
Oh,
because
he
knows a lot. Because Sandra couldn't really tell anybody. So she talked to him because he knew.
Right.
He knew what was going on. So she wasn't like she was revealing she wasn't she wasn't telling anybody about them because he knew.
Right.
So
if as far as we know, he didn't like sexually abuse Sandra when she was younger. He wasn't involved in that.
No, what happened with her was she gave a sexual favor for a cat, and she was of age.
Okay. So he's not a good guy. But
no.
But as far as we know, he wasn't
either.
Right.
But and he's not. If you had to put him on the scale of these guys, he's not these guys. But he is a scumbag also.
Yeah, he's a scumbag also, but not the scale of Divine and the Farwell twins, who were obviously groomed by Divine. That's just so obvious. And what I'm really kind of perplexed about is, why is it taking them so long to arrest Divine? I absolutely despise this guy. He gives me the creeps. He's given me the creeps from day one when I first saw his photo. I watched a little bit of his. Have you been watching his these hearings that he's been going to?
Yeah, I stream them.
Yeah. I have. I gotta follow along with you next time. I might have caught him on yours actually. I might have caught the last one where it looks like he's in like his garage.
Yeah, it's in this weird garage or like basement.
Yeah, it's very weird. It looks creepy. It looks extra creepy, to be honest with you, where he's even streaming from. But maybe I was with you on that one then. I might have picked it up from someone else. But I don't understand what the heck is taking so long.
That's the first thing on the list that the family wants with him, is to get it so he can no longer be a police officer. Because right now he's suspended. His license is suspended.
Right.
But if they don't remove him, he could go unretire, or he can do like detail work.
Right.
So he could still make money as a police officer. So that his next hearing is coming up on May 6th, and then he goes before the post commission June 6th and 7th, I believe. Yeah. So those 2 days we really, say a prayer, because we need him to no longer be a police officer.
Oh, absolutely. I want to type those dates in the chat box so I have them. I'm going to put them up so that they'll be on the replay. Tell me the dates again.
May 6th is his next post-commission hearing.
And this is Robert.
Yes, Robert Divine. Yeah. And then on June 6th and 7th is his to go in front of the actual post-commission for them to decide if he's going to lose his license to operate as a police officer in the state of Massachusetts.
All right, so I'm typing this in. So May 6th, I'm slow when I type on here because my computer's on a little stand. So May 6th, Robert Devine has his
He has a post-commission hearing.
commission hearing. Okay, let me get that up there. So we got that for the replay.
And then on June 6th and 7th, he goes before the actual post-commission.
Okay, June 6th and 7th.
Yes.
Interesting. June 6th is the day I graduated from high school many moons ago. June 6th and 7th, Robert Devine will be before the, who did you say he's going to be before?
The post-commission.
It'll
He's
be
actually going to be up. I've been calling it his post-commission trial.
Okay.
It's not really a trial, but that's the best way for people to kind of understand the difference.
So the post-commission, what else can we use other than trial? Post-commission, help us out here, our friends in our friend zone. I like to call the chat box the friend zone because to me, it's not chatting, it's actual friends, people that care enough about people that have passed away, that have been unalived by a nefarious character who still isn't arrested and is willing to come to these live streams and care about these families. They are my friends for life. So I call the chat box the friend zone. Yeah, hearings. We've got it up here as May 6th. He's got a post-commission hearing, but this is more, it's up on another level. Are they just calling it a hearing?
No, they just say he's going before the post-commission. Like the post-commission hearings, he just sits with a judge and his lawyer and a clerk and the lawyer for the post-commission, who would be like the DA type deal character. Those are just hearings. So that's why I've been calling it the post-commission trial, because technically that's kind of like what it is.
Yeah, it basically is. So I'm just putting it this way. June 6th and 7th, Robert Devine will be before post-commission for a decision if he gets to keep his license to be an officer.
Yep.
Does that do it? All right.
Yep.
So now we've got that up there for all of you on our replay. And please share this out if you participate in social media. I will put these memes up that, Mizzy, did you make this one?
Yeah, I have this photo or
this one that I have up now. I grabbed this off of your page at some point.
I'm not sure if I made it, possibly.
I always like to give credit, but some of these things just get passed out. Like some of the memes I've made, they're out there somewhere. I don't care if people know I made them. I just want them out there so people share them. So I'll post these back out on my Facebook and my Twitter X. And if you can all share out any information on any one of these four nefarious characters. I agree with this completely, though. Not totally sure about Joshua Heel, but if Joshua Heel knew that what was going on, if he knew about the illegal activity and didn't report it, then he should be arrested too for failure to report. So I agree with this statement. These four men need to be in prison. What they're each charged with and how long, that's up to the system. But they all committed acts of violence, in my opinion, and of misdeeds and of criminal activity. You name it, they've done it. And,
I think, unfortunately, excuse me, Josh Heel, they would make a deal with to get to testify against the other three.
Yeah, Stephanie's with us tonight, and she said, "I'm an attorney. Proceeding is a good catch-all word. Thank you. We appreciate you. I love it when attorneys come to our live shows.
I'll start using that because I've been like, what do I say? I don't. It's not really a trial.
And the word was like right in the back of my mind, but I could not pull it out. Yes, it's a proceeding. So thank you so much for being here tonight, Stephanie, and thanks for that. We really appreciate you. And if you're ever around on Fridays and you want to join us on our live stream, Friday Night Lies, where we're going over the Karen Reed trial, I have Happily Angry Lawyer coming in and out, but he's super busy. And I need some more attorneys joining me on Friday because I know the police side of it. I know the social work side of it. I do not know the legal side of it very I know a little bit, but not enough. And I would like my audience to have a more well-rounded, opinion of what's going on. So if you would ever like to be in our chat or our friend zone or live stream on the platform with us, Julie, who's here tonight, Julie, AKA Resident Bostonian, AKA craziest woman on earth. She says craziest person on earth, but I want her to start saying craziest woman on earth, because, we got to have the woman power here. Julie is amazing. She's been conducting her own experiments about the crime scene and things that went on with all this nefarious behavior by the Canton PD and Massachusetts PD. And we've been showing her epic recreations that she has filmed of herself doing. And she's on to a new one now. I'm not going to give it away. I'm not sure if we're going to see that one tomorrow night or if we're going to see that next Friday night. But we talk about the witnesses. We're up to Matt McCabe and Jen McCabe. We're finishing Matt McCabe tomorrow night. We're going to start on Jen McCabe tomorrow night. And then we always end our night with Julie, craziest person on earth. I just give her the platform and she shows us these experiments she's been doing to call out the ridiculousness that was the non-investigation into John O'Keefe's death. So any of you that are here tonight, we welcome you on Friday nights or in the replay Friday nights. We're trying to do our best to call out the corruption and say it like it is, basically, right? And that is how we feel about that case, that I truly 100% believe that she was framed. And anyone's welcome on Friday nights. If you don't agree with us, that's okay. You can come on, you can talk in the friend zone. You can tell us why you don't think so. But trust me, everybody that comes with us on Friday nights, we will have something to say to you about that, because I can answer pretty much any question anybody has about the case involving the police malfeasance and the police corruption. So that's what we're doing on Fridays. If you guys want to come, I can't wait, Mizzy, for the rest of these guys to have some type of accountability, especially Robert Devine for what they've done. William Farwell, there's been almost next to nothing said about him.
Yeah, I actually, since you just brought him up, I want to go back to something that Barb posted in the page.
Yeah,
I think she was answering somebody's question. He actually doesn't live in Arizona. He lives in New Mexico, but he's in the Arizona National Guard.
Who is that?
William Farwell.
Oh, he is not in the state of Massachusetts anymore?
No.
When
he left? He left before the Stoughton report came out.
Oh,
he actually was working for the TSA in Baltimore, and they got wind of the investigation and they gave him the boot. So he went to New Mexico and he's been out there ever since.
And do we know where he's working?
No, just that he's in the National Guard.
Interesting. So He was able to get a job in the National Guard.
He was in the National Guard the whole time.
In the National Guard, that's right.
He's a bomb tech, so that's the thing, is he's highly sought after.
So what's your opinion on what he knew about his brother's behavior?
Oh, he knew everything.
That's what I thought.
There was her friend, Sandra's friend, came to myself, and then Barb and I both interviewed her a few months before he was arrested, because she was the one who wanted to make sure that we knew that it was, she's like, this, I have an aspect about her case that nobody's talking about. And she's told us about it being an S&M type deal situation, that right. It wasn't just, a normal sexual interaction. It was more of an S&M, bondage type deal thing.
Bondage, yeah.
And she said that there was one time she was hooking up with one of the brothers, and the other brother, because they tracked her. They had the location.
I saw Barbara put that up here. Yeah.
Yeah. They tracked her on her phone, but we also think that he was tracking her car too.
Oh my God.
Because he would accuse her, why do you have location turned off? And they both were tracking her. So the other brother, while she was hooking up with one of them, the other brother showed up, and the brothers got into a fight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I want to take a minute. I've just blocked my camera because I have to take my glasses off to read. So I don't want my whole big face sticking up right in your faces. But I want to go back through and have you answer some questions. So let me
Okay.
run back through the chat. I've been putting up everything so the replay can see what's going on. But it looks like Kiska. What a beautiful name. Thank you so much for being here. Mizzy is amazing. She gives me hope. I love that. And I agree with you completely. When I started, I wrote this on Twitter today and on Facebook. When I started Social Change Warriors in 2020, my idea was I wanted to come up with something that could be a community activism group that could call out the dirty cops and could call out dirty government, because I was just so sick and tired of seeing it and constantly hearing these stories from friends and associates and acquaintances who would call me and say, hey, we want to tell you about this because you're an ex-cop and we want to know your opinion, and you're also a social worker, and we just want to know how do we do this? How do we tackle this as a community? And I would brainstorm with people, and this has been going on for years. And it suddenly dawned on me, I need to come up with something, some type of a program or a movement. So I came up with Social Change Warriors in 2020, and I started out just very small scale, just doing pre-recordeds, working with other social workers around the country, going after small, more like school board issues and problems at schools with children being bullied, and as sexual assaults and rape in colleges, teaching women how to be safe on campus, and just a lot of different topics that social workers and I were tackling, but we were mostly tackling all topics that had to do with social work. We weren't looking at true crime. We weren't looking at calling out the dirty cops or the dirty government at that point. And then the more I started getting into true crime, I had a couple surgeries and I was laid up. So I was really starting to follow. I don't know if you've heard of the Jennifer Doulos case, Jennifer Farwell Doulos. She was unalived by her husband. And the handwriting was on the wall for months and months, but unfortunately she did her best. She moved out, she took the kids, she had restraining orders against him, and it just wasn't enough. And he successfully killed her, and he hid her body, and no one's ever found her. And then they let him out on bail. Unbelievable. They had so much evidence against him, and then they let him out on bail, which unfortunately, some people get out on bail, but some people shouldn't get out on bail. Yeah. I mean, Jennifer's, is missing. They don't know where she is, and you're letting this guy on bail, and he unalived himself in his garage.
Oh, I think I know that case.
Yeah,
I think I do know that case. Yeah.
Sad. It's just sad and despicable. And then the girlfriend, Michelle Triconis, ends up getting arrested for being a party to a crime because they had video on him dumping garbage bags at various locations throughout the neighboring cities. And she was in the truck with him.
This case is even from Connecticut, right?
Yes.
I know the case. Yes, I remember that case.
And so here, let me remind you guys, this was the beautiful Jennifer Doulos, Farwell Doulos. So this was actually the case, and Ellen Greenberg. Oh, the Ellen Greenberg case is near and dear to my heart because I have advocated for her since 2011 in various ways. And when I first started on Twitter, that's really what even brought me to Twitter, is I wanted to advocate for Ellen. And these two cases they're both domestic violence cases. They were both unalived. I mean, no one's ever been arrested in Ellen's case. We're still waiting for it to even be overturned to a homicide versus an unalived itself. That's a despicable situation. It's
utterly ridiculous what they're saying that she did to her. Like, I mean, you look at Sandra's case, at least her case, unless you were somebody who was like me, was like, nope, she didn't do this to herself. But to outside people, they might be like, well, she might have. But I mean, you can't stab yourself in the back of the head the way she did. I mean, like I said, Sandra's case, the second I saw it, I knew he did this. I was like, nope, one of them did it. The one that was supposedly her boyfriend did it. But but Ellen's, like, it's ludicrous that, like,
it is
what they say she did to herself. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's criminal. And how the case was handled was utterly despicable, and how it doesn't just scream cover up. I mean, it just screams cover up, and how they've gotten away with this since 2011 is one of the most disgusting things, honest to God, I've ever seen in any domestic violence case, because sometimes they just have no evidence. Like, for instance, these are her parents, and I've been fortunate enough to have some email conversations with Sandy, with her mom, and what they've been through since 2011 for their daughter. They've given up their life to stand for her and to advocate for her. And it really hasn't gotten, much coverage, but yet there were some live streamers that took this onto themselves about 2 or 3 years ago. Gavin Fish started covering this, and he's done amazing work. If you go to Gavin Fish, to his YouTube channel, he's done amazing work covering this case and showing exactly what we all believe happened. And Surviving the Survivor has also covered Ellen's case very thoroughly. And it's absolutely despicable that this person has gotten away with what they did to Ellen. This is a clear-cut domestic violence homicide. And how in the world there are so many people that have to go down for this. Like, I cannot wait to watch this crumble, because this has got high-level corruption. High level. And that's what scares me a little bit, is that it's so high and it involves so many high upper end people that I'm concerned for Ellen and her family that it won't get solved, and that this gentleman right here will continue to live his best life with his new wife and new family, while Ellen's family suffers. And it's just one of the most despicable cases. Now, you've also got Suzanne Morphew in Colorado, and her case is still unsolved. They had arrested at one point her husband, because he was arrested on murder charges in May of 2021, because she disappeared in 2020, but they did not have her. They did not find her. Again, another husband unalives his wife and hides the body. So the charges were dismissed a year later because they did not feel that they had enough to go to court. So the prosecutors had to dismiss the case, but they dismissed it in such a way that if they do get evidence against him again, that they can arrest him. Now, guys, there is, again, the handwriting's on the wall for this. This is a classic domestic violence case, in my opinion, and in many people's opinions. But her two daughters have always stood by their father, because they don't believe that he could have ever harmed their mother. And I give them every respect and right to feel that way. Who wants to believe that your father could hurt your mother in such a way, shoot her with a tranquilizer gun, and leave her and bury her out in the middle of nowhere, Colorado, to never be found? Because that was his plan. He never wanted her to be found. And it was a sheer miracle that they found Suzanne Morphew, to be honest with you, because they were looking for another missing woman whose husband or boyfriend unalived her. And she'd been missing for a number of years, and they were looking for her in this area. This was an area far removed from Suzanne's house, and where her original bike was planted, as if she had a bike accident, or as if a big cat, like Barry said, a big cat might have gotten her. Suzanne rode her bike all the time. They had been living in Colorado because their daughter was going to college out there, and they were both had very solid careers. They lived in $1 million home out in the beautiful mountains of Colorado, and she was a bike enthusiast. So I think she pretty much knew how to take care of herself. And sure, anything can happen in Colorado when you're out in the wilderness, but she stuck to the pavement when she was on her bikes, from what I've read. And I never thought in a million years it was a big cat. And then they finally find her because they were looking for this other person. And then the autopsy results come back that what they arrested him in the beginning was because they found a shell casing in the dryer of his tranquilizer gun. And when he was questioned about this, he said that he shoots animals with tranquilizers so he can remove their antlers. That's what he said. And the day that he was seen, his cell phone showed him popping all around the house as if like he was running around his house. And he says he was chasing a chipmunk with a tranquilizer gun to kill the chipmunks. I mean, his answers to their questions were absolutely absurd. absurd. So I've been following this case as well. And again, all these cases that we're following involve domestic violence, just like Sandra's, and the person is getting away with it, just like Matthew Farwell was, until he wasn't. And I want to ask you, Mizzy, do you think if John O'Keefe had not died, that they would have ever got Matthew Farwell?
I don't know. It would have been, see, that's the thing, is we don't know. People have wondered if they were investigating Sandra before, Matthew, before John O'Keefe's murder, but we don't know. I mean, they said in the press conference, they were looking into her case for a year, but I don't know if they were, because we don't know if there's something else that they've been in that area for, because they were investigating Morrissey's office, so we don't know what else they were investigating,
right?
But it definitely had a lot to do with it. There are a few little things that like clicked into place, like for us, the Boston Globe has been covering Sandra's case from the beginning. Her cousin a different cousin, not Barb, went to the Boston Globe and told them, hey, my cousin's case, there's something wrong here. They did cover it. They have been covering it since, since her death. And then the report came out, no matter how much we hate the Stoughton Police Department for letting this happen,
right?
Donna McNamara, she had, the foresight to, make them, give to her deputy chief and say, you need to do an IR report. And he started the investigation, and it, they came out with a lot of stuff for this. And then, and then they released a report in 2022, but it didn't take on. And it took like the case podcast coming out, the lawsuit that the family did, and then it was like, I feel like there was a baton being passed.
Yes.
Baton got passed to myself and Barb.
Right. And thank goodness for you and Barb for everything you've done for Sandra. I just wish you could have met her, Mizzy. I
know. I talk to her all the time, like if there's something, I'm like, am I getting it right? Tell me, talk to me, Yes. I feel like I've joked around. I feel like from the time I found out about her case in September 2022, I felt like that she was like, Mizzy, look into my case. Yeah. And because I was doing other cases, I was kind of ignoring the chatter in my ear,
right?
But I was still looking at her case. And then I feel like she went to Sarah and said, Sarah, tell Mizzy to look into my case, because Sarah is the one who said, hey, let's look into it. And like I said, I was eventually going to get to her case.
And what happened with Sarah, by the way? I meant to ask you this a minute ago. Sorry to interrupt you. What happened to Sarah and her situation with her son?
She's still trying to, her son, she's still trying to solve his murder.
Oh no.
His murder might be a organ trafficking.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, feel free to give her my contact information.
Okay.
If she wants any help at all with advocacy or anything whatsoever, she wants me to look at the police reports or anything at all I can help with, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, if anybody wants to look at the case, it's Brandon's Voice on Facebook or on TikTok. She has a lot of information there, and
he's in North Carolina, right?
Yes. Asheboro, North Carolina.
My newest family is in South Carolina, and their son was, they believe, murdered, run down by a car of men who were out to get him. It's a convoluted story, and then they put his body on the railroad track to make it look like he was hit by a train. Yeah. And it's pretty twisted. I'm just learning the ins and outs of it now, and I'm going to be doing a live stream on it next Thursday. So that's just a state away from from
Yeah.
Brandon. So I'll definitely look into it and see if I can reach out to her, but feel free to, if you're still in contact with her, to give her my contact info as well.
Okay.
All right. Sorry to the friend zone. I got distracted because these women mean so much to me, and I never met any of them, just like Mizzy did not meet Sandra. I have not met Ellen Greenberg. I did not meet Suzanne Morphew or Suzanne Clark Simpson or Sarah Ebersol. I didn't get to meet Jason Veach, my other case here in Florida, who's got an unsolved homicide. But I feel like they're part of my family now. When you advocate for someone who does not have justice and their families do not have justice, you become very emotionally involved with them. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't think of all these people now that I'm advocating for. And so I get very passionate about getting justice for them. And I feel like I can't move on from them until they get it. And if they don't get it, I'll always keep them on our platform. They will always be here as one of our victims that we are standing for. We'll stand for people until they get justice, and we'll add more as we have the time to do it. And as you know, Mizzy, sometimes my health interrupts me and I can't always do everything I want to do, but I did make it to Sarah's standout last Saturday, and that was a 2-hour drive for me and a 2-hour drive back. It was a lot. I had a little bit of a crash the day after, but it was meaningful to me to be there. Sometimes just doing the work in this box, this little computer that we live in when we live stream, it's meaningful, but I want more. I want to be on the ground. So I have actually gone to the police departments with Kara for her husband Jason's case. I've actually made appointments that I could have done on the phone, but I wanted them in person because I like to feel that in-person contact. I like to talk to people in person when I can. I mean, a lot of these cases are not near me, so I can't. But these 2 Florida cases I'm advocating for right now, they are near me, and I can do things on the ground. And I know that doing things on the ground, like with what Karen Reed movement has been doing, all of the people that are standing out with their signs, and I got to experience that. I've done other standouts years ago, but I haven't done a standout in a long time. Now I did 2 for Karen Reed by myself, one in Madison with Amber. When I first met Amber, we did one in Madison at the Capitol where I'm from. And then I did one here in Daytona Beach. And then I went to the one in Orlando recently. So I've been to 3 Karen Reed standouts, but obviously I've never met her. I haven't spoken to her, where the families, these 2 Florida families, I've met them both in person. I speak with them on a daily basis. So going to the standouts for those 2 families was super meaningful to me. It really felt like I was finally really doing something, even though I know I'm doing something with the live streams and the research. Being on the ground like that and holding up that sign and listening to the cars beep at you and waving at people, and it just feels so empowering. And that's where you get that community feeling that you're doing something as a community.
We do once a month for Sandra.
Yes.
I can't physically do more than that. It takes me a few days to recuperate from it. I often get sick, but we do once a month. We've taken off. Her anniversary was the 1st of February.
Right.
We did a ceremony and then a standout, and then we had a court date on the 10th of February, and there was Just En Route. I don't know if you know that case.
I do.
His anniversary was on the 7th. So we also did that. So there's a lot, because we do a thing called Stronger Together, where the Free Karen Reed, the Justice for Sandra Birchmore group, and Just En Route group come together, and we did like a Morrissey. We've done the State House.
I've seen those. Yes, I think that's wonderful.
And you had asked me before, like, I think I look at it, because Karen decided to fight and she didn't take a deal, it made our work much easier, because our supporters are 90%, maybe even more, free Karen Reed. Right. And as Karen's case got larger and bigger, we were in lockstep, because, we might have been baby growing, but we were still growing with her. And I was able to go on her pages and say, hey guys, listen, there's another case that took place in Canton and Stoughton, but she was murdered in Canton, and it's the same cops, same DA, Canton Police Department. There's a bunch of troopers that are same in common. And even if the troopers, yes, Michael Proctor wasn't on Sandra's case, but he's part of the unit. So he could have answered the phone to ask, answer a question or take notes of, somebody who was calling.
Right.
We don't know. But the ones that are listed on the case, he's not a listed, officer on her case. And the bigger that Karen's case got, the bigger we were able to get. And we were able to get them to really open their eyes, saying, wow, there's another case. And it made us in our advocacy for Sandra easier, because once we got a little bigger, the YouTubers who were following Karen's case came along also. And
yes. I saw all that kind of happening in real time. I'll be real honest, because I'm outspoken. I was a little bit saddened that it took them that long, to be totally honest with you. Because
I think it's because people were so focused on Karen and getting her free and getting her case out there more.
Right, but you can only do so much. Okay.
Yeah.
Even I'm not, as a live streamer, we realize our limitations, right? We can only do so much. We can only advocate so much. So some of it now is in the hands of the jury, just like it was the first time around. Her case was in the hands of the jury. You can advocate till the cows come home, but those 12 people are going to determine her fate. They did it the first time in a hung, and now they're going to do it again. So in the meantime, why can't you be doing more for a case that is literally down the street, which was the Sandra Birchmore case? So this is my little rant, okay, that I'm going to rant about, because this was bugging me the whole time. And I was in a lot of chat boxes before I started live streaming in June and July. And I kept hashtagging Sandra Birchmore. And people were like, who the heck is that? And I'm like, I live in Florida and Wisconsin. And if I know who Sandra Birchmore is, why don't you know who Sandra Birchmore is? You live there, a majority of the people that are involved in Karen Reed's case live in Massachusetts or the surrounding states nearby. But a lot of Massachusetts people that are very into this case and are supporting Karen. And I think it is amazing and outstanding. But in the same light, you've got Sandra Birchmore, a young girl framed for her own death by a police officer. It's egregious. It's disgusting. And why can't we get as big of a movement going for Sandra Birchmore as we have for Karen Reed? That's been bothering me for months and months and months.
I think part of it is Karen's case was in court. True. Sandra's, they had no place to go and advocate, really. We would do standouts at Michael. We've done a couple at Michael Morrissey's, but her case wasn't in court. And now that it's federal, it's not going to be televised, because federal cases aren't, televised. So there's still this kind of wall. And honestly, I would love for more people. We would love for more people to come over to see Sandra's case. Yes. But you should see the State House in September 2024. So many people were just coming up to me, giving me hugs. There were so many signs for Sandra Birchmore. I wasn't expecting it, because I'm used to being like, Karen Reed's little sister, kind of like how it is.
Absolutely.
John O'Keefe's little sister.
At Sarah's standout that I just went to on Saturday, there were like 20 of us total that came and went over a 7-hour period. I was there for the last 4 hours of it. There were many there for the first 3.5 hours of it. Her sister was there the whole time. Her sister is you. She is the Mizzy of Florida right now, is Michelle, doing all the advocacy that she's doing for Sarah. Kara is like you for her husband. She's doing all this advocacy and standing out. And it's amazing what these family members put themselves through and what they do. I just wanted to mention that Stephanie said earlier, when you are grooming and sexual assault victim, your mental age stops at that time the abuse begins. Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing that with us. That is absolutely true, that any psychologist that specializes in child.
And that's one of the things about Sandra. She was very, very, very smart.
Yeah.
Very, very intelligent, but she was emotionally stunted because she was,
just took the words right out of her cousin's mouth, my dear. I just brought up your cousin's comment. Stephanie, she said, Stephanie, you are correct. And Sandra was emotionally stunted due to the grooming and coercion. Yeah. And that just would happen to any of us that were in that position at her age. That's just the body's natural defense mechanism for this type of trauma that you're under. It's not a whole lot different than if she had been like a captive in a way. She was mentally captive of these men. They didn't physically have her captive, but they had her mentally captive. So it's almost the same.
Yeah. And so when it comes to the aspects of, we would love more, if we could have a national standout day for Sandra, and there would be like what has happened for Carrie.
Well, maybe we can get there, Mizzy. We just have to keep.
We would love that. I mean, Barb and I would love for that to happen.
We can keep it up and keep adding to the advocacy that you and Barbara are doing, and we get more people involved in other states to care about this case, because there are other children around the country whose cases are going unnoticed. It's happening right now. That as we speak, there are children that are being groomed, and it's despicable. And so, if Sandra's like the angel for all of these other children and young adults, because of her case getting some type of national or worldly attention as we go forward, then so be it. That's what.
And that's my goal and Barb's goal. We don't want Sandra to be just known for what happened to her.
Right.
If us putting her case out there can teach parents about grooming. And not like, we, as a country, we throw grooming around too flippantly. We throw it around too easily. What's happening to children like Sandra is what grooming is. And if her case could save another child from going through what she did, because, a parent recognizes, things, in their child, things that's going on and the thing about grooming is it's the long game. It's not something that happens overnight.
Oh, no. Domestic violence is a long game too, Mizzy, that when men abuse their wives, domestic violence is a long game. It's like you said earlier, it starts out with that love bombing, and then it progresses into more verbal abuse, putting them down, making them not feel worthy, taking over the checking accounts, taking over decisions of the household, then more constant, berating and putting you down in front of your friends, in front of your family. And then, then the hits start, the little shoves here, a push there. It's a very slow process. It's very, very sad. Oh my gosh, Barbara said, Robert Devane is now a lawyer?
Yep.
Holy crap. Are you kidding me?
He was going, he became a lawyer not too long after. He was right into the bar not too long after Sandra died.
Good, Robert. Maybe you can defend yourself when you go to trial for every nasty thing you've ever done. And maybe you can help maybe he's becoming a lawyer because he knows he's going to prison, and then he's going to work in the law library at prison and help other prisoners. Maybe that's his plan. It's just unbelievable to me. I'm just looking for other questions, Mizzy. If anybody had them, I've been putting them up, but I want to make sure I get to them. Barbara says Robert Devane still lives in Mass, but William Farwell, there we go, moved to Arizona. Yes, we were just talking about that. Arizona, right? Yeah.
No, he lives in New Mexico.
But New Mexico.
Arizona National Guard.
Okay, Arizona National Guard, but lives in New Mexico. Okay.
Yep.
And everybody should be warned who lives around him that he was involved in the grooming of a child. It's just unbelievable. Let me see. I know I saw a question here from Julie. Let me find that, Julie. I know you did. And then Barbara says, now I didn't catch this one earlier, Barbara. Sandra wouldn't eat anything new without texting me first to make sure it was safe for the baby. Oh my goodness. She was doing the laundry the night Matt threw. Yes, there was so much evidence, Barbara, that there is no way she would have unalived herself by buying the stroller, by dusting her car off from the snow, by doing the laundry, right? Ordering a pizza, right? I mean, these are not things who's about to unalive themselves. Ellen Greenberg was making a fruit salad. Ellen Greenberg had been seeing a psychiatrist to help her with her depression because she was having depression. She was having depression because she was being domestically abused by her scumbag fiance. That's why she was having depression. So she was actually seeing someone to help her care for her depression, and she wanted to get out. She wanted to leave him. And then that's when he unalived her. And for anyone to believe that either one of those sweet, young girls with their whole lives ahead of them would have taken their own lives. It makes me so angry. Sometimes I just have to go out and take walks after these live streams because my head wants to explode with the sheer audacity that these people have, these dirty cops that helped them and them themselves that think that they can get away with this and treat women like absolute dirt and either dispose of their bodies never to be found or frame them for their own unaliving, like, and think they can get away with it. It makes me so angry, guys.
That's the thing is, like, Matthew Farwell walked into that apartment knowing that he could do what he did. So Sandra
said something. Go ahead, keep going.
Sandra was, she was in therapy, and her therapist said there's no way. Sandra, I was told that Sandra had her therapist on speed dial, and if she needed to call her when she supposedly broke up with him that night, she could have called her therapist. She could have contacted Barb. They were texting before he got there. And Barb lives on the West Coast. So at that time of night, it would have been early for Barb.
Right. So, and she could have called 911 or done anything. Yeah. So something Shauna brought up, and thank you, Shauna, because I was actually going to ask you about this, Mizzy, because I've looked his wife up a couple of times, but I think they've removed her from the internet. You can't really find anything about Matthew Farwell's wife. I think they've just scrubbed her. Shauna says, where is the wind blowing of the wife of this monster? Is she supporting him? Do we know?
I don't know if she's supporting him. She did contact me once because something to do with the kids. And I told her we wouldn't talk about that anymore. The only time I talk about the kids is when I talk about the son being born the next day, because that's part of Sandra's story.
Yes, absolutely.
He went from the hospital to go murder Sandra and went back to the hospital. He's in the same clothes in a photo of him holding his baby son. So that's all she said.
Incredibly diabolical, isn't it? When you think about, that's sociopath level.
He murdered one of his children as he's other ones being born.
Yeah, he needs to never, ever, ever, ever get out of prison.
And I think he knows that. I think he knows he's not getting out. I was told by somebody who used to be a guard at the prison where he's being held that he comes out, he's on protective custody. So he's in the cell 23 hours a day. He only comes out, takes a shower, and goes back in. He doesn't exercise. He doesn't, watch TV for that hour. He showers and goes right back to his cell. Boy. I think he realized that it's over for him.
Yeah. But do you think he'll turn evidence on his brother? And
I hope. It is a death penalty case, killing a witness is a federal is a federal crime, is a death penalty case. So that's probably the only thing that they could deal with him, is we'll take the death penalty off the case. But you got to realize if he turns over what happened, and he's going to have to turn his brother in too, his twin brother.
Right. He can't just turn in Divine and not turn in the twin brother. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he also has to give up any police officer that also did this, but also who he knows was helping to cover up his crime. Because, people need to understand that Michael Morrissey and the Massachusetts State Police naming, Trooper Fanning and Trooper Dunn had all this information.
Yeah.
Had all of this information, and they didn't get the case done. And if your audience watch the Karen Reed trial, we've been often wondering if they didn't do to the medical examiner what they were joking about in those text messages, putting pressure on her. Oh, you're a rookie. You couldn't get it changed to murder. Mm-hmm. So, we wonder if it was the opposite effect, that it wasn't. It was categorized as a suicide because there's no reason her hyoid bone was broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no, and there was defensive wounds. And
Well,
all these officers said there were no defensive wounds, or not defensive wounds, but there were injuries that showed that wasn't her who did it. She had abrasions on her nose. She and her upper chest. She had it said blunt force trauma to her upper chest. It was an imprint of the buckle from the strap, but the strap was up by her right ear. So why would she have an indentation of the buckle if it was up by her ear when she did this?
right.
There was a broken necklace of her grandmother gave her, a pink flamingo necklace that was on the floor, broken with clumps of hair in it. There was clumps of hair wrapped around in the ligature. And usually when you hang yourself, that doesn't happen. It happens like that when somebody is doing it.
A struggle. If there's a struggle of some sorts, because someone's going to try to protect their own life. Right.
Yeah.
And we haven't even gotten into him. We're going to have to meet again when you feel up to him, when you have time, because I want to dig into the dirty cops on this case and the absolute disgusting behavior of how they handled the case, because they are at fault as well. And I think they were all in on it. I think a lot of people need to go down for this, need to go to jail.
You got to think of it. The lead detective, just see if this rings a little bit true. The lead detective, Fanning, was a former Stoughton police officer.
Yep.
He worked with Robert Devine.
Yep.
He was working at the Stoughton Police Department when the Farwell brothers were going through the Explorers program. Robert Devine ran this Explorers program by himself, and his deputy chief and top lieutenant were Matthew Farwell and William Farwell. They ran the Stoughton Police Explorers program with Robert Devine as teenagers. I'm not talking later on as adults.
Right. When they were teenagers.
As teenagers.
Yeah.
So they were at the Stoughton Police Department all the time. So Fanning most likely met the Farwell brothers when they were teenagers. But even if he didn't, he would have met Matthew Farwell as a detective.
He had to have met him as teenagers, Mizzy. You're right on that. It's not a big department. You're talking about what, 30 officers? And then plus command staff?
40, 50. But even still, they were there
command
all
staff
the time.
counts, but they're not on patrol. So maybe 30 patrol officers. Then you've got your command staff, maybe 50 total. So he would have had to have met the Farwell brothers. He would have had to have.
They were always there. And he plays hockey with the Stoughton Police Department. And I'm trying to find out if the Farwell brothers played hockey, because somebody told me they did, but I haven't been able to prove it. I don't have that.
I might have to go down the rabbit hole for you on that one. Let me write that down.
I've been trying to. I've started doing it again. I have somebody I got to talk to again.
Okay.
Next time I see him, I'll talk to him about it again. So
but how many text messages were there? 32,000? Was that the number?
What, 32,000 plus text messages just with Matthew Farwell. There were over 50,000 text messages with the three of the officers. 50,000 text messages. And they said they couldn't find the 32,000 text messages on Matthew Farwell's phone. I find it funny that in these two cases, Celebrate doesn't work. In Karen's case and in Sandra's case. But for all these other cases, they can find deleted text messages.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of funny. And what do these two cases have in common? Oh, yeah. Alternative suspects are cops.
Exactly.
They're
dirty cops. They're not cops.
Yep.
They're dirty cops. I call them like I see them. They're all despicable and disgusting. Julie said, what's the deal with Matthew Farwell's family? Have they made any statements about this, or are they keeping tight lips?
No, they're not making any statements.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Are their parents alive?
I know that their mother is. I don't know about a father.
About a father. Okay.
Or is their father possibly could be in Tennessee? I can't remember. I might be thinking of somebody else, but yeah, or an uncle. I
Yeah.
can't remember. But yeah, the mother's still alive.
Barbara said, and I feel for the mother if she just was oblivious to all this. And it's hard for people to understand that a lot of people want to throw the moms and the dads under the bus when kids commit crimes, or when older people commit crimes. It's not always the parents' fault, guys. A lot of parents are oblivious to what's going on because their kids are master manipulators, and they're just that way. And they have personality disorders that even the parents can't see. Sometimes it's because of love of your child that you can't see what's right in front of your face. And so I am never critical. I cannot be ever critical of parents. Now, if it's proven, or if it's obvious, or if there's evidence that parents were helping, or that parents were the reason for it because they abused the kids, that's a different story. But I don't ever get on the initial bandwagon of let's hang the parents, because you don't know. We don't know the backstory. We don't know for sure what was going on in that household, or what was going on with the parents. And until there's enough evidence for me to believe that the parents could be partially to blame or at fault for what their kids did, but these guys were not, they were kids when it all started, when Divine groomed them, but they most certainly were not kids when they were doing what they were doing to Sandra Birchmore all those years. And obviously Matthew Farwell was not a kid when he framed her for her own death. So they are responsible for their own actions. Absolutely. Nefarious, despicable actions. Barbara says she was only in that apartment for 2 months. Once she was living alone, he had the opportunity to kill her. I hope he rots in jail forever. Yep. Yes, Barbara. And we're so sorry for the loss of your cousin. And it's just really inspiring and wonderful that you and Mizzy have joined forces, and that you're leading the charge for Justice for Sandra Birchmore. And we'll do whatever we can do to help you. She's been part of my live streams since I started in August. I put together, I made her own slide. I show her, I don't know if you noticed, but she's in our opening number that we play for inspiration, our advocacy song. And she's also in our Wednesday night domestic violence advocacy song. So I've just never had an opportunity to have this deep of a conversation with anybody involved with her advocacy. And it really warms my heart that I get to meet you, Mizzy. And Barbara, thank you so much for coming tonight. Let me quickly see if there's any other questions I have.
Remember how I said, let me come back to about her
apartment?
I
wrote it down. You want to bring back around. Yes.
Where her apartment is, I don't know if you've ever shown the video of him walking in and out of her apartment.
I did show it back in like September. Yeah, that still gives me the creeps, because I'll go back and watch that every once in a while, and it just, that again, it shows a complete lack of police investigation and regard for what the evidence was. To continue.
And Colleen Crawford, she's part of Kara Reed's trial.
Yes.
She said, "Oh, there's nothing to see here. Nothing to see here, folks." Yeah. But when you walk into her building, because I actually went to her building and I was able to get in, you walk in, you go up the elevator, and we walked off the elevator, and we took a left because that's where all the apartments are. You take a left off the elevator. Straight in front of you when you get off is a utility closet. And then you turn left and there's all the apartments. So we walked up and we're looking for her number, and it wasn't on the wall. And we're like, what? It's third floor. What? And then we're kind of like looking around. We happened to turn back around, and her apartment is actually, when you get off the elevator, it's right there on the right. So it's not by any other apartment. I mean, there are apartments across the hall,
right?
But unfortunately, nobody was in. As far as I know, nobody was living in that apartment. And on next to her apartment, which is that utility closet. So that apartment is basically above the entryway and where all the mailboxes are and all that. So her apartment's kind of removed a little bit. So even that, if she did scream, people might not have been able to hear her.
Right.
There's the hallway. There's the entryway of when you come off. There's when you step off an elevator, usually to get off on a floor, there's usually a little tiny lobby, and then you go. There's a small entryway, and then you have to go to your left, and then there's a hallway. So it's like her apartment. That even played into it, because he knew going to her apartment, especially in a snowstorm at 9:14 at night, he knew that it was a nor'easter, so most people were probably snuggled up in their apartments.
That's what I was just about to say. It was a nor'easter.
Driving around, unless they had a job where they had to. Most people at that, time of night, they're getting ready for bed or they're in bed.
Right.
So, even that played against her. And the snow, just like John's case, the snow is also kind of used as a means to delay the investigation. Sandra wasn't found. She was murdered on the 1st. She wasn't found to the 4th.
Oh
so I mean, that
was
snow
that
delay,
long? 3 days? Oh,
because they were off the next day on the 1st. They were off the next day because there was a big snowstorm.
Right. That's
so
right.
So then Wednesday, they were like, oh, that's weird. Sandra's not here at school. But they figure, maybe she couldn't get out, or maybe she can't call us type deal thing. Maybe she didn't have power, And then the 4th, they were like, what's going on? She's not answering her phone. Right. She's not coming to work. That's when they told their SRO officer, the Sharon School, told their SRO officer.
Mizzy, who was the first on the scene?
Officer Cotard, Officer Yeaton, and Officer Brady.
Okay. So they were doing a wellness check at that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they sent 3 of them.
They sent 2, and then they called for a third officer.
Okay. Once they found her.
No, they called for a third, because the 2 that went originally were SRO officers. Like, they came from the school.
Okay.
And so they wanted an officer.
Okay. That makes more sense. I was about to say that sounds really weird to me, because I've gone on wellness checks before with only one other backup. And very rarely do you ever need a third backup for a wellness check.
Yeah, they wanted a patrolman instead of the SRO officers.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then they went in. They first knocked on her door, didn't get an answer, obviously. And then they called Sergeant Lank. We all know where he's from, the Karen Reed.
Yeah.
Called him.
Lank the snake.
Yeah. Called him and told them to go check her car to see if her car was there. And they went and found her car, and it had, like a foot of snow on it. So they went and got the key from the office, and then they went in and found her.
And Julie, our craziest person on earth, said, question, is Canton PD involved in this case in any way, or did they officially refuse? And then Barbara answered for us. Thank you, Barbara. Yes, CPD involved, because Sandra was killed in Canton and living there. She moved to Canton Woods Apartments on December 1st, 2020.
Yeah. And they were the first ones to go to her apartment. They were only involved up till the 6th. They found her on the 4th. They investigated the early investigation. And then on the 6th, Sergeant Lank, Detective McCourt, and Detective Albert went to her apartment, went back to get the
Interesting. Kevin Albert is hardly ever mentioned, really, in either one of these cases. I find that to be very bizarre. He's a detective in a very small department where there's not a lot of detectives. Well, and yet there's 2 huge cases, and he is hardly ever mentioned.
Well, partly it's because, from what I've been told, from like police officers, or Leos who got tips from Canton police officers, say that he's very lazy and he doesn't want to take things. So
retired on duty, we used to call them. RODs, retired on duty. The guys that were getting up in age, and they would just get pretty lazy, wouldn't want to do too much work, especially if it was the end of their week. They wouldn't want to take a case that would need follow-ups or reports. So everybody called them RODs, retired on duty.
Yeah. So he went back. So the 3 of them went to retrieve. This is what I found weird. Okay. I don't understand why Canton PD went back on the 6th. because they don't do murder cases. They turn them over to Massachusetts State Police. And it wasn't like John's where it was delayed. It was the Massachusetts State Police were called and they came.
That very day.
The day they found her, and they came and they photographed the apartment. They did some investigating and they came back. And when they came back, it was Trooper Dunn was originally the one who was called from Massachusetts State Police CPAC
unit. Okay.
And him and Clark and Tufts were the 3 troopers who went that day. And then
your brain is a steel trap. You just
which is funny because I get migraine fog and I get fiber fog. If you ask me what I had for lunch yesterday, I'll be like, I don't know. But I know this case. Like, I know
you do.
Karen and John's case, I know a lot of too.
Oh yeah, I know we all do. Like most of it. I'm really impressed with how you just rattle off the names of all these officers and boom, boom, boom. And I'm sure Barbara's sitting in the chat acting as a co-host. She's rattling off the answer.
Barb and I team up. This is how me and Barb team up. Like she'll come if she can. Sometimes she just can't. Sometimes mentally she can't. She's like, I gotta take a day off. Or sometimes she'll be like, I'm busy. But for the most part, when I'm doing a show, she'll come in the chat. Because there might be something that you and I talk about, we'll move on.
Right.
And still has questions. Or they'll say something and she has to correct what they're saying because they're like, oh, so I heard that, da-da-da-da-da. Like people will say, oh, so I heard Kevin Albert was the first one on the scene. No, he wasn't. Or I heard Lank was the first one on the scene. No, he wasn't. He was called to the scene after his officers found him. So that might be something that Bob would be like, no, this is what happened. And so it helps correct the record because there's so much misinformation with Sandra's case. And
things just go down the racetrack of disinformation, and it speeds up as it goes, and then more things hop in the car, and it's crazy.
That's why we tried. That's why if you follow me on X. Sorry, my lipstick's like clunking in my corners of my mouth.
You're fine. We can't see that, by the way, but you can probably feel it.
It's bothering me. You'll see me correct the record a lot. Yeah, people say they'll say, "Well, Kevin Albert was the first one to find her." No, he wasn't. He was like this a little tiny bit of her case, but it shows who is both on Karen's case and his Sandra's case. Right. He is one of those names. We have to keep correcting the record because we want to make sure, people come to us for the most correct information that can be put out there. Yes. And we want to make sure, to the best of our ability that we're putting the correct information out there. That's why I'm so glad the FBI did come into this, because now we can take the FBI affidavit and say, this is what happened. And we can use that as a tool. But, like the Stoughton police report, the internal investigation is very vital to us too, because it shows so much. But also the Massachusetts State Police one is too, because it shows you what were you guys doing. Because Barb and I have interviewed people or talked to people that they've never talked to.
Yeah.
Sandra's friends. Why didn't you talk to Sandra's friends?
Exactly.
Why didn't you? The only people they really talked to were people who called them, and they talked to her coworkers because it had to do with her job that they were called to her apartment. But for the most part, they talked to her aunt, but they didn't talk to people unless people called them. And like Barb was one of the last few people to talk to her. They never called her back. Like this young woman is dead, and whether or not they believed that she killed herself or not, they still should have been. You're still supposed to do an investigation.
Exactly. You don't get to just decide something on day one. That's not how it's done. That's only done when there's a cover up. That's only done when there's something dirty happening. If you follow any other investigations that are properly done, that is how it is. The questions need to be answered, and asked and answered, and people need to be interviewed, and you have to come up with different scenarios, different theories based on the evidence, and then you follow the evidence where it takes you. And investigations can be long and drawn out. It's very rare for a police department, in Ellen Greenberg's case, Sandra Birchmore, John O'Keefe, to make these snap decisions within 24 to 48 hours. That's unheard of. That's how you know right away that this is not right. Something is wrong. Because
in Sandra's case, it wasn't even hours. They walked in and they automatically said, "Oh, she killed herself." Like Canton PD, before the Massachusetts State Police were even called, they said she killed herself. As far as we know, I was giving a tip, and there are 2 other people, both former Leos, who got the same tip. So I believe it's most likely true that 3 of the Canton police officers that were on the scene didn't agree with Massachusetts State Police, and that they went to Lieutenant Gallagher. I mean, this is how much, like, they need this person named Gallagher. That's how much the information was, like, named Gallagher, and said that he emailed either Morrissey's office or the Massachusetts State Police saying that they didn't agree with them. I FOIA'd both entities, actually all 3 entities.
Good for you.
They're saying this email doesn't exist. Well, of course they're not going to give me that email if it exists.
Right.
Because if they give me that email, it proves that they all knew that she didn't do it. But that question. Oh,
yes.
There is a
bill. Julie wanted to ask Mizzy about any legislature. Is she working on a bill now? Mizzy, please explain.
There's actually a bill making it through the Massachusetts legislature. It's going through both houses, and I was approached by somebody who told me about the bill, who's going to make an introduction, and hopefully we can work with them. It's basically about groomers, and it's about adults having sex with as mentors. So if you're a teacher, a coach, a priest, a police officer running a program, a Girl Scout, anybody who falls under that arc will have charges put against them. It's to kind of close a loop and I haven't been introduced to the ladies yet who are doing this bill. But it's something that I would like to get involved in. Barb wants to see the full bill. I want to talk to them. I would even go down there and meet with them, because it's something that, as the Justice for Sandra Birchmore group, we could put our weight behind it.
Yes, and absolutely.
We come with kind of an army, If we give it to the free Canary people are our followers.
Yes.
A lot of them are angry about Sandra's case. Yeah. So, and the ones from Massachusetts can call their congressmen and senators and help propel this bill. So there is a bill that's making it through, coming to conference, but it's not there yet.
Okay. I'd love to know more about it. I'm happy to share out anything I can on it for you guys. So just send me any info you've got, and I'd like to learn more about it. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm all for legislature that helps, women and children.
Yeah.
Let's see. Julie had another question. I just missed it. Where did it go? I just had it and now I lost it. Where is it, Julie? Here we go. Does Canton PD have anything to do with the investigation? Were they, and you just answered this, yes, they were first on the scene. Did they remove items from the crime scene and take them to the Sally Port away from the crime scene?
No, they didn't do that. They did collect the video, but Massachusetts State Police got that video, and the Massachusetts State Police are the ones who collected stuff. But I still, the 6th, February 6th, there's something funky about that. Because why did Canton Police go back? It was already given to Massachusetts State Police.
Right. So they shouldn't have gone back. If
Yeah,
they turned it over, they're no longer involved, right?
Well, see, this is what's weird. Although I think the audit was bullcrap. That's one of the things they said in the audit. They shouldn't be coming off cases. They should stay on cases and work with the Massachusetts State Police, which to me always made sense. It always made sense that that police department shouldn't be fully taken off the case. And that's what Massachusetts, it made no sense to me. But they had it was in Massachusetts State Police's hands. So why were they there on the 6th? Because any contact that came to Lank, he should have just been forwarded to Massachusetts State Police.
Yes.
Oh, yes, Fanning. My boy Fanning.
He's got some skeletons, right?
Fanning is the lead. Well, Fanning is the lead supervisor detective, but when I spoke to him on the phone about this case, he told me he was the lead detective on this case. Him and Trooper Dunn are basically Proctor and Buchanek, or whatever how you pronounce his name.
Right, I know. I never know how to pronounce it either because it's been pronounced so many ways.
Yeah, I just try not to pronounce it the other way.
The way that Julie pronounced it.
Julie, I'm trying not to be a Julie Albert.
I've said it that way just because
if I'm here,
rolls off the tongue, it just rolls
I would call them that.
What can we do?
But yeah, basically they were freaking frack like those two. Yeah. And Fanning, anytime these officers needed to be investigated, when Matthew Farwell was initially contacted, when he was interviewed in a school parking lot, not taken to the police station and sat down. No, he met with them in a school parking lot, which is it's like that. It has an extra ick to it. It's like this groomer, disgusting guy who groomed this young woman from 12 to 23. You're meeting with him in a parking lot, a school parking lot. That's an extra ick.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That makes just no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, because he was a fellow. He's a fellow guy. He's one of our dudes. We're gonna give him a little leeway. We're gonna meet with him in a parking lot. He wasn't a witness. They said by the time they met with him. No, wait. Actually, they met with him on the 5th, so they hadn't seen the video yet. Or was it the 6th? My brain's kind of.
No, you got a lot of information.
I think they met with him. No, maybe they did. No, they met with him on the 6th. So they met with him the day they saw the video. Because he said he found out on the 5th. I think
it's just so much in this case is just mind-boggling, and it just makes you feel sick, just sick to your stomach. Our resident attorney tonight, Stephanie, and thank you, Stephanie, for offering to come on Friday Night Lies. You can send me an email and I'll send you the link for tomorrow night. Julie is in our chat. Julie meets Stephanie. She's my co-host on Friday nights, and the Nagel Black Blob is our silent co-host. Julie did experiments with a black blob that she ordered off of Amazon, and she did these pretty interesting experiments in her driveway. And we just appreciate so much the time that Julie put into showing all of us how absurd so much of this police investigation into John O'Keefe's death is. So Julie,
I need to step off camera for just a minute.
You go right ahead. I'm gonna just keep putting up what our audience, wonderful friend zone has tonight. Stephanie shares with us that Kevin Albert is the detective who called the 2018 Chloe biting victim and asked how it could go away because she had tried to make a report to the animal control officer. Whoa, that's a good one, Stephanie. Of course he was. Of course he was. I just still find it very disturbing that he was so left out of so much to do with everything that happened in that Albert house. I just think he was behind. I think he's been behind the scenes the whole time.
Oh yeah.
There's just no way. They're a close-knit family, and there's no way he hasn't been behind the scenes of helping with this cover-up. I just don't buy it that he's just completely innocent of all of this.
I mean, there's the whole rumor of him being called that day that night.
Right. Julie wrote, they went back. Do you know who went back? I think she's referring to what you were talking about, that they went back to the house on February the 6th.
Yeah, it was Sergeant Lank. He's a lieutenant now. Whoops, sorry. Something's popping up on my computer.
Oh,
Sergeant Lank. Let me see. Sergeant Lank. Sorry, this is distracting me. Hold on. I have ADHD and it's bad. Okay. Sergeant Lank.
Do whatever you got to do. We're all good here.
Got it off. It just wasn't popping up, so I could shut it down.
Right.
Sergeant
I'm
Lank.
going to stand up a minute and stretch.
Detective McCourt, and Detective Albert. And then for the Massachusetts State Police was Detective Trooper Dunn, Trooper Fanning, and Trooper Clark or Tufts. I think it might have been Tufts.
So is there a police report to that effect, to them going back to the, I got to stand up for one, guys.
It's in the Canton report, and it's also in the Massachusetts State Police report. If anybody wants our reports, we have a few different places you can get them. We have a website for Sandra.
Let me type that in the chat box for everybody. Go for it.
It's www.justiceforsandrabirchmore.com.
I'm typing away here. Whoops, did I spell that right? Yep. Okay, I've got www.justiceforsandrabirchmore.com.
Yep.
All right.
And
so
we have all of those reports up on that page, or you can go to our Facebook page by the same name, Justice for Sandra Birchmore.
Okay. Now, where did that go? I just put it
We
up.
don't have all the civil case reports up because there's a lot of those reports. But we have all the Canton reports, the Stoughton internal report, the Massachusetts State Police report. We have the FBI affidavit, and we have the FBI what's it called?
What's with that red flag? Good question, Julie. I don't know. Something weird just happened with the chat box. I can't get my comment to post.
Oh,
I'm gonna try it again. I might have clicked something by accident when I stood up. So if I did, I'm sorry, guys. That Julie said that's what that is, red flag. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, got it. That she's saying it's a red flag that they went back, I believe. Is that what you're saying, Julie? Because Julie said, I'm with you there, Mizzy. That's weird that they went back a few days later. What were they looking for, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I don't think it's that bad that the Massachusetts State Police went back. You know, they should have went back a second day to make sure they didn't miss anything. But it's weird that the Canton police went there. You know, they Lank got a message from the woman who runs the office, and she wanted him to speak with a witness, and also they went back to get the report. But there's no reason why Lank didn't just give the witness information to Trooper Dunn or Trooper Fanning.
Right.
Like, there was no reason for the Canton police to go back to that scene.
No,
so
because it was turned over, unless they were doing mutual aid and they were still helping, which would be okay and acceptable. They wouldn't have any real reason to have to recuse themselves from that. So they could have been doing, mutual aid, but that's what that was. I mean, do we know why they did it?
It kind of that, but there was no reason for it. I mean, they all thought it was a suicide. They were all calling it a suicide. So it doesn't take 6 officers to search a tiny apartment when you already searched it 2 days earlier.
I think they went back to make sure there wasn't anything to implicate Matthew Farwell.
Well, they missed some stuff. They missed that necklace.
Yeah.
That necklace was found by a family member.
Mm-hmm.
So 6 6 police officers can't find a broken necklace on the floor.
That's pretty disturbing.
Yeah. And you know what's something else that's disturbing is the name of her case is called the Blacklight case.
What?
Yeah.
What in the world?
Yeah.
What is that supposed to mean?
What do you pick up with blacklight?
Blood.
What else?
Semen. Sorry, YouTube, but we got to call it like we see it here on Social Change Warriors.
So even in that, them by their name of the case was disrespecting her.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't know that, Mizzy. I'm blown away. I got to sit for a minute. I'm just so disgusted with so many police departments right now. I've been disgusted with Canton and Stoughton for quite a while. I've been disgusted with the Philadelphia PD, and now I'm disgusted with Marion County sheriffs and Volusia County sheriffs. And now who knows what I'm going to find out about South Carolina, this poor young man who did not harm a soul in his whole life and gets unalived and then thrown on a railroad track. I mean, the stuff that's going on, and that's been covered up too. There's corruption up there for sure. I am just, some days I just want to throw my hands up and just say, what the fuck, is going on in our country? How are we hiring such terrible, horrible people to represent our communities in government and represent us in the police department? It's a crying shame. And it makes me just absolutely sick.
That's why I like to use it. And I use this a lot when I was making my, I call them canned videos where you edit them and you put them out. Bad police officers move up in the ranks and become bad, sergeants, detectives, lieutenants.
I've witnessed it.
Some of them even become the deputy police chief, like Robert Devine.
Yes,
and that's the problem is, yes, there are a lot of wonderful, caring, officers who just want to make their communities better and protect and serve. But there are a slice of them that are bad, and we need to weed out these officers. There needs to be not even just, there needs to be more training. There needs to be more
accountability. Transparency.
Laws that say if you don't turn it, there needs to be more put on the officers for not turning in their fellow officers. There
Absolutely.
needs to be a way and that's the problem is like the good officers often feel like they can't come forward because there's that blue wall.
I witnessed it, Mizzy. I witnessed it on the job. I've witnessed it on a kind of a side note with other friends of mine that are in law enforcement. It can be a very threatening environment when you know something and they know you know it, and you get these subliminal signs that you better shut your mouth. Yeah. And that's the blue wall is good and bad. It can be good in good ways where you protect your fellow officer. Yeah. You have their back on dangerous calls, of course, but where it's involving dirty cops, it's absolute bullshit. Yeah. And so it has to stop. It's easy for us to say, we have to do better in the hiring process. We have to do better in vetting. But remember, some of these people, we go all the way back to the beginning of the show when we started talking about narcissism. A lot of people that are attracted to positions of power are the narcissists. And they are the ones that are attracted to police, fire, doctors, lawyers, CEOs, bankers. They are the ones that are attracted to these big, heavy positions where you have this big, heavy responsibility, because with more responsibility comes more accountability. But they don't want to be accountable. They want to get away with their nefarious acts. And because it makes them feel good, they're the big man on campus to all of their other associates or their other officers. So it is difficult to weed them out, because you have to trust me on something, guys. The hiring process for all the police departments that I was a part of and that I have friends a part of, it's a very rigorous process. It took 4 months for me to go through my process, and that's normal. what you have to go through, the levels of interviews, the levels of panel interviews, there's levels of scenarios that they put you through, there's written exams, there's essays, then there's the psychological, there's the physical. It's a lot, and it takes about 3 to 4 months to go through the hiring process. And then if you haven't already put yourself through a police academy, they will hire you, most police departments, if you have a 2-year or 4-year degree, and they will pay for you to go to the police academy. So I had a 4-year degree when I became an officer, so they paid for me to go to the police academy. So then you're gone to the police academy for 3 to 4 to 5 months, depending on what state you're in. So it is a lot. And how I've seen people get weeded out in the police academy after they got hired. I've seen people get weeded out during field training, which takes weeks and weeks and weeks. So there is a process for this, but some of these guys, and it's mostly guys, I hate to say it, but I have not run across very many dirty women cops. I don't know. I just haven't. And I know they're out there, and I'm sure they are. And I think you've got one right now in Canton, probably. But there's not as many, but there aren't as many women cops. So we'd have to do the statistics on that, right? There still aren't as many women cops as there are men cops. But the dirty cops are there, and they're going to keep getting through because they are master manipulators, and they're narcissists, most of them, and they're good at it. They're good at being bad. That's just.
It also goes along with what I said before. There's also that you could have this well-meaning officer that comes out of the police academy who just wants to be a good cop, but they get paired up with a dirty TO officer, and their training officer will teach them the bad behaviors, and then they become not necessarily a bad police officer, but they become not necessarily a dirty police officer. They just become a bad police officer. They might show,
or they become just I don't give a shit police officer.
Yeah, because that's
my job.
That's the mentality that's been drilled into them by their TO officer. There's a show I like to watch. It's called The Rookie. Yes, and for the most part, the training officers, they're good, but they say, they tell, I'm gonna mold you, and you get to see how it could be done. And they show, for the most part, like I said, good training officers. But they showed, one of the last episodes was what happened when there was a bad training officer, and there was this rookie who came in who had been a rookie for a year, who should have been just about ready to be on the streets by himself, where he didn't know anything. And that's because they had this guy who was like the head man training officer from another part of LAPD, and he didn't want to blemish his record. So he pawned him off on someone else and didn't even teach them anything. So it's like you have training officers who can take somebody who's coming out of the academy. Could you imagine Robert Devine being a training officer? Can you imagine what he's going to do to them?
Yeah.
It's
terrible. It's horrifying.
There needs to be more accountability. And I think that's the problem in policing. There isn't that much accountability. I think if police, the qualified immunity, I don't want police officers who, people are assholes, out there. I'm saying generally.
They're everywhere. They're everywhere.
So a police officer pulls somebody over, and somebody's mad that they get pulled over, so they start making claims about that police officer. Oh yeah, training day. That's even Woof.
Yeah.
And that was based on a real person. That was based on somebody who is might have been part of Notorious B.I.G.'s killing. So, but anyway, it's I forgot what to say. You take these young men and women, but like you said, mostly young men, and you train the bad parts into them. Mm-hmm. In qualified immunity, that's what I was saying. Qualified immunity kind of takes to say, they can't be, nothing can happen to police officers. I don't want a police officer who had a good stop, and the person who was driving the car is just an asshole and they want to complain and they want to get this cop in trouble.
Right.
Or we don't want that to happen as a society. But we also don't want a police officer who is beating citizens for no reason, yank somebody out of the car for no reason.
Right.
They stopped them because their taillight was busted. And then all of a sudden the person is down on the ground being arrested for
or
nothing.
what happened to Anne Marie Grant. Have you met Anne Marie Grant?
Yes, I've met Anne Marie.
So Anne Marie Grant was gracious enough to be my very first calling out corruption episode. When I first live streamed, I found her on social media and I was supporting her and her brother, Thomas Purdy, and he was murdered in police custody in Reno, Nevada. And nobody paid for his death. She has never gotten justice for him. And then she formed that group with Just en Route's sister and several other family members of other people that were unalived in police custody. And they have that foundation. So we had a really nice live stream together, honoring her brother and talking about what happened in his case. And that's how I learned of Just en Route, because this was way back last August when Anne Marie and I first live streamed together, or early September. And that's how I came to find out about Just en Route and did my research. And I made a special plaque for Thomas and Justin. They're on the same little placard together. And I've put that up many times during my live streams as well to support those two families, because what happened to those two young men should never happen. There's no excuse for it to happen. The training is there for these officers. They are trained and trained and trained. They go to in-services. You have to go to in-services in order to remain a law enforcement officer in your department. Those in-services take place quarterly. You have muscle memory of what to do in most of these egregious situations, in these life-threatening situations. So what happened to both these young men should have never happened, and somebody should have paid in both these cases. And I'm just heartsick for both Just en Route's family, his sister, and Anne Marie Grant. But I'm very, very amazed at their resilience that they would start this foundation. And I'd like to meet with them again. They're really amazing people, and I'd really love to meet with them again. If you have contacts with them, let them know that I would like to meet with them again and talk about their foundation, let more people know about it and how we can.
I talked to Jen. I don't talk to, I've met Anne Marie a couple times.
I have Anne Marie's contact. I can reach out to her, but I don't have Jen. So if you want to give Jen my contact too, I would be grateful to do a live stream with her and Anne Marie and hear more and any of the other family members that they work with. And help to spread the word and advocate for their foundation, because dying in police custody should absolutely never happen. It's inexcusable unless it's just a rare, just a one-off, one in a million, because things are going to happen. Accidents can happen, bad things can happen, and bad cops obviously can happen. But there's just too much. It's too much. There's too much of it. And it's just sad and horrific for these families.
Absolutely. And I don't talk to Jen all the time, but I do talk to her, Jen. But take Sandra's case. Her family wouldn't have been able to, I don't think the family would have been able to sue these officers if it wasn't for the Stoughton Police Department saying, they were the ones who turned them into the Post Commission. They were the ones who came out and said that these officers were grooming her and doing this to her. And they shouldn't be police officers anymore. So that's why they were able to sue, because otherwise they could have just said qualified immunity. There shouldn't, like I said, we want our police officers not to sue. We don't want that the works to be gummed up for stupid, piddly reasons. But we should be able to sue police officers when there is absolute wrongdoing.
Yes.
And in Sandra's case, thankfully, her family was able to, do a lawsuit against, the Farwell brothers and Robert Devine.
Good.
Because the justice system isn't working. That's one of the things that people say. Well, why isn't the family fighting it? This is their way. They chose to fight, was to do a lawsuit. And
that's all Ellen Greenberg's family was left with, because the medical examiner changed it from a homicide to a suicide 3 months later. And they're left up in arms. What are you talking about? What do you mean? There's no way our daughter did this to herself. And they've been fighting that all along. So they've had to go the lawsuit route. And that's how they finally got what they got in January. But now we're sitting here idle. This new medical examiner is supposed to be taking into account that the medical examiner from back then recanted before he would have to testify in court, and he's living his cushy life in Florida now. We know for damn well sure he was paid or he was coerced into changing that from a suicide, which was his initial correct. I mean, homicide was his initial correct medical examiner's report, and then flip it to a suicide 3 months later. You know, he was coerced and he quit and then moved down to Florida, where he's been living his best life, screwing over the Greenbergs all these years. And now all this time has gone by. How are we ever going to, what are we going to get for evidence? How are we ever going to arrest Sam Goldberg? Yes, Sam, I 100% know that you unalived Ellen Greenberg, and I'm going to say it because it's my live show and I have the First Amendment right to say it. The evidence points 100% to you, because he really screwed up. He thought he was so smart, and he thought for sure, Mizzy, that he could make it look like she did it to herself the way he rigged the lock. So he made it impossible for anybody else to be able to have hurt her, because there's not some random serial killer could have come upon Ellen Greenberg's building in the middle of a nor'easter and pretended to frame her for her own death. Some stranger, right? Some random psychopath that is not going to do that. So that's where he really effed up, is he framed her for her own suicide, but he didn't do a good enough job. But then he got help from the police and the medical examiner and his judge uncle. And they've gotten away with it all these freaking years. It is absolutely despicable.
I mean, that's what happened with in Sandra's case. You know, they looked the other way, and the DA buried it. They put it under, well, we're still investigating. We're still investigating. They said they closed the part of her death, but they said the abuse. They were still investigating for years. And that's how he got away with it for so long. They left this animal on the streets for 3.5 years.
I know. It's just the most.
I know for a fact he hurt another girl. He hurt another girl.
You do know that?
Yes. Well, I can't really get into it.
No, it's okay. I'm not surprised. One girl. I have tweeted.
Not girl. I should say a young woman. And just like Sandra, she's very young looking.
Mm-hmm.
So she looked like she could have been 16, 17.
That's exactly the case. A lot of times they will go after these older girls that they can't be charged for, but because they look younger, it's fulfilling their fantasy. They're sick.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantasy. Like if you read the FBI report, that's what was in the text messages with her and Matthew. Do you want me to pretend I'm 15? Do you want me to pretend I'm 14?
Yeah.
Yeah, all these gross things, the little play thing that they would play.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I know, like I said, I know for a fact that there was Matthew Farwell did something to another young woman.
Well, I have quote tweeted out a lot of your stuff that you've put up for Sandra on your Sandra Birchmore Twitter X account. And I have always said there is no way there aren't more victims. There's no way. These men, it was an operation these guys were running. And I think it's very similar to what was going on here in Florida as well, with a young girl that was killed, that Sarah, who's missing, the father of her child, was a person of interest before he ever met Sarah in an unaliving of a young girl that was only 6 years old. And a guy that he knew that he lived in Kentucky with and moved to Florida with is now in prison for the rest of his life. And Joe was a person of interest, but they couldn't get him to cooperate, and they didn't have enough to arrest him. So this Sarah's baby daddy has been running around free all these years. God knows how many victims he has. God knows how many victims Devane, Farwell, and even we don't know that much about this other guy, right? What's his name again? I always forget his name. The school officer.
Oh, now now I'm forgetting.
I know I space on his name, but I know it. Hang on. I got it. Just a second. We'll put them up one last time. Not that we want to give them too much airtime, but everybody who's muted, yes, there he is.
When I have to think of his name, I always forget it. Yeah,
Josh Hill, because he's not innocent in all of this. He had every chance that he could have turned these losers in, these six psychopaths, and he allowed these psychopaths to remain in a uniform on the street. It's utterly sickening and disgusting. And I've never, all of these current cases that I'm advocating for, they all have a component of absolutely disgustingness. But this one here, with this many law enforcement officers involved and other people turning their heads the other way, I find it very hard to believe that these are the only 4 that knew what the fuck was going on. I don't, sorry, it's not Wednesday. We do not swear on Thursdays, but these guys make me sick. And I just cannot wait to be what I may have to fly up there, Mizzy, so I can meet you in person. I really want to go to his trial. I'd like to be there and stand out with you when Matthew Farwell finally goes to trial, unless he pleads guilty and doesn't go to trial.
But it'll still have to do a hearing.
They'll still have to do a hearing. Yeah. And what do we know, Mizzy? This was my one burning question I never even asked you. And we're at the end of both of our body times, I know. And even our friend zone is probably getting tired right now too. What the heck is taking so long? Why are they getting all of these stays? What is happening?
We've been told that they're working behind the scenes with the judge and stuff like that. So I don't know.
Well,
I don't. It has to happen. Federal, with the state, with the like say Massachusetts Commonwealth, things are a little done more in up front because there's filings and all that stuff. I mean, there's still filings in this, but this has been like his hearing was supposed to be Thursday, the 15th, Tuesday.
And they moved it again though, right?
They moved it to, and it's May 6th, but it's a closed hearing.
Ah, shoot.
It's like a Zoom hearing.
Yeah. And only certain people can get the Zoom link, right?
Yeah.
That sucks.
I
can't help but think, and our resident lawyer tonight, who's with us tonight, I don't know if you're still with us, but maybe we can ask you about this even tomorrow night, Stephanie. Could this have something to do with the FBI investigation? And this obviously must have something to do with him maybe giving up state's evidence on his brother and on Divine and on Heel.
Possibly, but I do know I can state that the FBI is still investigating. Okay,
good. That's good to know.
So it's not a closed, done deal case. They're still investigating. I do know.
All right, good. But aren't they the only ones that are prosecuting him right now? Is the state?
No, the state isn't prosecuting him.
Not the state. No, the state's not prosecuting him. Why?
Now they're using the excuse, well, the FBI is doing it, so we're not going to, it's in their jurisdiction now. Bullshit.
Exactly.
Because you could be charged with state, especially when it comes to murder.
Yes.
Charged with state crimes and federal crimes.
Absolutely, you can. It's happened to many people.
And I don't know why the Attorney General has not put in a special prosecutor. She should have put in a special prosecutor and went after them. They have part of the case, the Attorney General. It's basically the white collar crimes, which is basically the time theft.
Yes.
So they possibly could be, and I like if the 3 of them only get charged for time theft because they were hooking up with her and text messaging with her so much
while they were on duty, right?
If that's all he gets charged with state crimes, bet you Michael Morrissey trots out and says, we got him. See, we charged him. No, you didn't.
Right, exactly.
No, you didn't. You dropped that ball.
Yeah, they sure have. It's just absolutely despicable. My heart just breaks for Barbara, for you, Mizzy, for all, for just because you now feel that you are part of Sandra's family. Once you do this much advocacy, you have every right to feel that way. And I'm sure the family is grateful to you for feeling that way. I saw this on one of your posts when it was the 3-year anniversary, and I know you did another one for the 4-year, but it just breaks me that we have young children amongst us, and that there's these monsters living amongst us, and it's very frustrating because, and you can, I'm sure, agree with this, is we're never going to stop all of them. We a lot of what we have to do is recon afterwards, is advocacy afterwards, to try to maybe save 1 or 2 in the future, but we're never going to be able to save them all, guys. It's just, there's just too many monsters out there in police and government, and they're on both sides of the aisle. And I am bipartisan for Social Change Warriors, and I always make sure people understand that I don't care who you vote for. If you want to advocate with us for a victim of a homicide, of domestic violence, or non-domestic violence, you are all welcome here. But I really want people to try harder to use their critical thinking skills and realize that there is no one party to blame for anything that's going on in Massachusetts or Philadelphia or Clark, for Indiana, for example, where when I met Ed Byers, and he told us about the sheriff and all the corruption there. They're all in on it together in various ways. When I'm on Twitter X and on Facebook, and I see a group of people blaming one party over the other and over the other, it's a waste of your time.
Yeah, corruption's on both sides. There's a lot of people from Massachusetts that are like, I can't believe this is only happening here. And I'm like, it's not only happening here. Most of my cases didn't take place in New England.
That's right.
Most of my cases I've done Florida, I've done North Carolina, 2 cases in North Carolina, I've done Georgia, obviously Massachusetts, New Hampshire.
Yes.
This happens all over the country.
Well,
power.
In every state. It's literally happening in every state right now. I can guarantee you that. So, I mean, just for example, Suzanne Clark Simpson's case is in Texas. Suzanne Morphew, Colorado. Sandra Birchmore, John O'Keefe, Karen Reed, Massachusetts. Sarah Ebersol, Jason Beach, my 2 cases, Florida. There's been nefarious activities happening in my home state of Wisconsin not too long ago. There's stuff going on in South Carolina right now that we're going to learn about next week. You've got your person in North Carolina. It's happening in every state, and it's constant. Like, it's just going to be revolving, because we'll never be able to get rid of all the criminals. We'll never be able to get rid of all the dirty cops. It's just not possible. So the only way not to lose faith and not to get discouraged and want to give up, because there are days where I do believe advocates like myself and Mizzy and others that I have met, I sometimes I think we just want to say, we can't beat them. We can't beat all these dirty people, but we can beat some of them, and we can save some people. And that's really more than if we did nothing. And not everybody's cut out for this. So those of us that are cut out for it, we have to do it. We have to keep doing it. And we can't listen to the naysayers. We can't listen to the critics and people that want to tear us down, because they don't know us. They don't know our heart. They don't know why they don't understand completely why we're doing this. So we have to just stay the course, right, Mizzy? Stay the course and advocate for who we can, that's in our power to, and recruit more people to help us, because we're just one person. You're just one person. I'm just one person. I always say this isn't a me channel. Social Change Warriors is a we channel, because it has to be a village. It has to be communities stepping forward and calling out this corruption and calling out injustice when families' cases are not being solved. Because most of the time it's because of mistakes. Police assume that someone just ran away when they were unalive. Police assume that it was a suicide when it absolutely wasn't. Police aren't well trained in homicides involving domestic violence and the signs and symptoms. Gabby Petito's case is very clear and evident of that. They could have saved her life, and they didn't, because they were not trained to see and recognize the signs of what a domestic violence victim looks like. Because when you're in it, you're terrified of that person and what they're going to do to me. And something very chilling that Michelle shared with me recently about Sarah was that she had written a note that said that she had to do certain things to keep Joseph happy, because a happy Joseph was a nonviolent Joseph.
Yeah.
And that when Joseph gets unhappy, when you're not doing exactly what he wants you to do, when he wants you to do it, then he's dangerous. And that is how most domestic violence victims live. They live that way because they're afraid to leave them, because they're afraid for their children. They're afraid of what this person uses the children in most cases as a bargaining chip, as a cohesive tool for people. And that's what they were doing to Sandra Birchmore all those years too. They were, like you said, they would love bomb her. They would make her feel worthy. They literally groomed her to like the things that they liked. You're not going to tell me in a million years that Sandra Birchmore just happened to love doing that kind of violent sexual activity at her young age. No way in hell. That was all.
I mean, at 15 years old, who comes up with, a 15-year-old girl wouldn't come up with that kind of and even on the way she died, a 23-year-old girl would never come up with the type of hanging that it was. It was a pressure hanging. Yeah. So it's the type of hanging that prisoners do. That's not something a 23-year-old girl who has tons of medication in her apartment. Most women,
right?
It's pills.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And that's the same thing with Ellen Greenberg. There is a very small fraction of anybody who stabs themselves more than once or twice. Most people that stab themselves, they go in the bathtub and they literally slit their wrist because they don't want to make a mess for their family. People that unalive themselves are very, very, very depressed, but they also care enough about their families that they try to do it in such a manner not to disturb their family. It's just wicked and sad what happens to people when they decide to take their own life, but they do not ever stab themselves 20 times. There is literally no scientific research to support anybody stabbing themselves 20 times. So, and the same with Sandra Birchmore, there's no logical research or any research that supports that a young woman of that age would put herself through that kind of trauma, because that is a slow death, by the way. That is a very slow death, that kind of pressure hanging. That is just miserable and painful, according to what I've read. And there's no way. I mean, that is how Kate Spade took her life.
Yep.
And I was reading a little bit about that a couple days ago, and it started to kind of concern me a little bit, because she was going through a divorce and she was very, very depressed. And I don't think they ever once considered domestic violence in her case.
Yeah.
It's just such a rare way for a woman to take her own life. It's just
even when they do a hanging, it's more in the door jamb, in the her closet. She wouldn't have been able to do it in the closet because they were cheap, right? But it would have been in the door jamb. Put the belt in the door jamb and do it that way. This is the way, like I said, prisoners. This is how prisoners do it, because they don't have any other means. They'll put powder, or it's how Aaron Hernandez did it. They'll put powder or lotion on the floor so they can't stop themselves, because their feet just slide out from under them. Mm-hmm. She was fully seated on the floor. Like, her bottom was on the floor. So if she was to have done this to herself, she would have totally had to do it like leaning in, putting total pressure on it. It would have been her doing it, not the momentum of her body hanging. It wouldn't have been like I said, Aaron Hernandez, or people who do it in prison, because they let their feet slide, so their feet can slide, so they can't stop themselves. Right. There is no way. It was when I heard of that, she was fully seated, because Robin Williams, this is how he did it, but he was elevated slightly.
And Shauna just wrote in our friend zone, Anthony Bordeaux. I forgot about that. Yeah. And that was the same week, I believe, that she's saying as Kate Spade, same manner, same week. And Robin Williams too.
Yeah, that's what I just said, Rob. That's
that's right.
Robin Williams is who when I first found out about it, because I was like, wait a minute, Robin Williams was similar to this. Let me look into it. Mm-hmm. And I found out that he was slightly elevated off the chair because I think he was in a chair.
Yeah. Oh, it just breaks my heart to think of that people do that to themselves. It's just so horrible. But when they didn't do it themselves and they're framed, it's just even triple. It's just triple egregious. And Shauna says, Mizzy, do you travel to these states or relentlessly are you on the phone?
I do all my stuff on, online.
Yeah.
I would interview, and when I was, before I took on Sandra's case, like with Brandon's case, I interviewed his mom. Like his mom took a chance with me. It was my first case that I took on, and we interviewed for like 9 hours, and I kept working on his case. Like his mom would be like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" Like became like almost a little bit of a partner, not like a full blown partner, but she would bounce things off of with me because she knew that she could talk to me. She knew she could send me anything.
Well, that's what I'm doing here with Kara Veach about her husband Jason, and with Sandra and with Sarah. That I'm on the phone with both of these women daily. We're constantly
through text messages.
Just constantly bouncing things off, like, oh, what about this, or what do you think about this? And then something new, like just last night, we live streamed with the roommate, Sarah's roommate, and she gave us the blow by blow of how she came home, found that the dogs had been alone for a long period of time based on the dog doo-doo in her house. But she mentioned something that I didn't know about. And here I've been with Michelle on this case since last September, and I'm just now hearing and seeing something that could possibly be important. So it's really, you have to just keep pushing forward and keep talking out the different scenarios based on the police reports that you have and the autopsies, and what if you have one. I mean, we don't have one for Sarah, but Jason has one, and Kara and I have gone over the audio. She paid over $1,200 to get all the body cam footage from the night her husband died, and we've meticulously gone through all the interviews in our live streams and just picked them apart, kind of like what we're doing with Karen Reed on Friday night. And that's what you do with the families that you work with. You're like their partner.
Like Sarah and I have like gone over so much. Like she'll be like, it's like in little things where it's like she says, I don't do it as much, and I sometimes feel guilty because I'm not able to be there as much for her as I used to be able to, because Brandon does own a big piece of my heart, because it was my first case and I care about him getting justice. And when Matthew Farwell was arrested, it makes me teary-eyed. I messaged Sarah and I said, they got him. And I want you to know that Brandon's looking down on you right now. I said, you might not have been able to get Brandon's killer off the streets, but you had a part in getting Sandra's.
Yes.
Brandon is looking down on you, smiling right now.
Absolutely.
You should be proud of yourself. I said, because if you didn't push me, I wouldn't have made the Facebook page.
Right.
If I didn't make the Facebook page, we don't know, me and Barb would have never met, and we wouldn't have started our adventure of pushing Sandra's case out there. It's just, we just became relentless, like online pushing her case. I mean, and then once I got the YouTube partners that I got, just being able to go on, going on all these shows multiple times, pushing her case. That's what I had to do to get her case out there. And
I'm just so glad that they finally came around, even though I feel it was delayed. That's my opinion, but I'm so glad they finally came around and put you on some of the shows.
Mike from Young Jerks. I got to say this, Mike from Young Jerks, he tried to get me on the show in like the back half of 2023. And I got sick, and then he got sick, and we both we canceled a bunch of times.
Well, good for him. He's been advocating for things long before John O'Keefe and Karen Reed. He's a true advocate. I mean, his channel has been advocating for many different people and topics. So good for Mike.
So it took a while for me to get on his show, but it was because we both had to keep canceling. And then when the new year came, he invited me on, and I got on his show, and his was the first big show I had been on. And then I talked to Brian LTL, and then, got on the Glare, and I've been on, so many shows now. And some of them now I've been on I could text Banfield, who's a nationally syndicated,
Yes.
She is like Banfield is a huge advocate for Sandra.
Good. Good.
Barb came on the show with me. I've been on there. I can't even tell you how many times. It's been so many. Sandra's case, and actually funny, we were supposed to be on Banfield the same night as the Greenbergs.
Wow.
But because of I don't know what case was. I don't know if it was Diddy's case or there was something else, or a plane crash. Something big happened, so it was breaking news, and we had to we got bumped 3 times, 3 days in a row, and they said, their producer Courtney said their 2 favorite cases are Ellen and Sandra.
Wow.
So,
it hurts that we have to have like favorite cases but that's the business they're in, right? So
yeah,
they want to stand for those ladies,
and they do. They
Mhm.
like I said, Banfield is a wonderful advocate for Sandra, and like I said, I've been on her show many times, and I'm so thankful.
I've seen you there before, and they
Yeah.
were a big advocate for Gabby as well.
Yeah. So they came down one time. They sent a cameraman one time to come interview us.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. So,
well, good.
They've been awesome. And, I've been on other shows. I've been on Courtney TV, I believe, twice.
Yeah, I saw you on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
You do a great job.
I've been asked to go on Julie's show in the morning. I've refused.
Good.
No, I'm not going to go on her show and spit in my supporters' face.
Right.
Because if I went on there, the people who
yes,
the only way I could make them happy is like at the end of the interview, as we're about to go off, I go, free Gary! But I couldn't. I'm talking about theater, so I'm not going to do that.
I would have loved that. Now, I have to tell you something quick before we go. We're at our 3-hour mark, and I know your health is similar to mine. So, but I would love to see you again, because I'd like to read some of the police reports. I haven't been able to do that with Sandra's case. I would like to be able to do that, and then I will have questions. There's no doubt. So when you're good with your health and we can meet again, I would love that. It's been just a joy and an honor to get to know you and meet you, and I'm so proud of you. I know I'm not your mother or your grandmother, but I'm so proud of you and Barbara, because I'm proud of anybody that's willing to stand for victims of homicides and victims of domestic violence. These are absolutely horrific crimes, egregious crimes, and it hurts our hearts to learn of them as a general public person. But then when you decide to become an advocate and you decide to live stream and use your social media voice, your social platform, then it becomes part of your life. And it's very difficult. And I know my own family and friends have concerns for me at times, because we're dealing with criminals, Mizzy. Like you said earlier, we're dealing with people that will do anything to protect what they have done, not to be found out. Yeah. So, and we're trying to uncover it. We're calling out corruption. So we do have to be careful. We do have to watch our backs. It can, I've had a couple nightmares in the last few weeks because of Sarah's case, because of so much crap going on with her case right now, with threats being made against Michelle and people telling Michelle they're going to make her disappear like her sister if they don't stop pushing that family to tell the truth. So I'm feeling anxiety a little bit now, because that case is really kind of starting to heat up, just like Sandra's did. And, you could have easily been threatened by those people. You still could be threatened by those people.
Massachusetts State Police Officer Trooper tried to intimidate myself and 2 friends.
That does not surprise me at all. So, you watch your back, take care of your health. Now, I forgot where I was going with this. What was I going to say? I was going to tell you one more thing before we close off. What were we going to say? What were we talking about? Brain fog is settling in. It's late Eastern time, folks. We were talking about reconvening for sure, but there was I know, that was something to do with Karen Reed that I know what I was going to tell you. So today, so my son's car broke down, and I decided we need to budget. We haven't budgeted for it. We need to budget for it. It's getting out of here. I'm towing it. So I called my insurance, and the tow truck shows up. He gets out. I open my garage door. He walks up. He starts talking to me, introduces himself. I said, "Are you by any chance from Boston?" And he says, "Yes, ma'am, I am." And I wish I had a good Boston accent like Julie, because I just can't even fake a Boston accent, you guys. I'm not good at it. I can imitate, Judge Bev a little bit, but I just knew it. And I said, I knew it. And I said, "How long have you lived here in Florida?" He says, 2 years. And he says, "Okay, well, tell me what's going on." And I did. And we're talking. And then we walk around to the back, and he starts taking pictures of my son's car. And I went, aha. A really good tow truck driver takes pictures of a car before he tows it, doesn't he? And he looks at me, and we both said at the same time, "Karen Reed's car." And then he proceeds to tell me that he and his wife have been following the case since the very beginning, and that they're from Boston. And he tells me all about what he believes was absolutely crap policing in the case, and with having to do to towing her vehicle and not taking photos of it.
Mhm.
And so we ended up exchanging numbers, and he might be available tomorrow night to come on Friday Night Live and give me the lowdown of how disgusted he is with the way they handled the
Nice.
tapes and the photos. So, I mean, what are the odds, right, of that?
Yeah.
My tow truck driver shows up, and he's from Boston, Massachusetts. You
Nice.
just never know, right?
Yep.
You just never know.
Never
Well,
know.
Mizzy, you just keep being you, but you take care of yourself as well, because we can't help others and their families if we let ourselves go down the drain. So,
Yep.
so all of us that advocate, and that's, I'm talking to all of you in the live, in our friend zone, and out there in live replay. Please take care of yourselves. You have to have days off from whoever you're following and whoever you're advocating for, because you will burn out. It's called compassion fatigue. It's real. It's an actual disorder. It can make you feel like you have the flu. You can get depressed. You can be sleepy. You can lose your appetite, or you can crave things. There is a whole slew of symptoms of compassion fatigue disorder. So be very careful when you're into the cases, as I know a lot of you are. And I commend all of you for your following of Karen Reed and what you're doing to help free her, a framed woman in America, and what you're doing for Sandra Birchmore, a very abused child, and then a continue to be abused adult, and then unalived by this nasty, horrible human being, Matthew Farwell. So Sandra Birchmore, we feel for your family. We hope that you're resting in peace, you and your baby. It's an absolute tragedy what happened to you, but there are good people. Their names are Mizzy and Barbara. They're taking care of you. They're watching over you, and they're going to create a legacy for you, because sometimes that is what we have at the end of the day. And my hashtag is just us, because it is just us at the end of the day. You can't always rely on your government or your police or anybody. Sometimes it is just us who come together as a community to stand for victims of crime. So thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. We appreciate you so much. Thank you, Mizzy. I'll look forward to connecting with you again, and keep me informed on anything I can do for anything you're doing. I'm happy to play it back out or show it or share it anytime for you and for dear sweet Sandra Birchmore and her baby. I will play out our song that was created by our creative department, who chooses to remain anonymous, which is fine. So that's why I call them the creative department. And we are currently working on a mini documentary for our wonderful Kara, for her husband, Jason Beach. We're hoping that this mini doc will push the needle. I've written the storyboard, and my creative department is working on all the editing, that we can push the needle on her case with this. And then when we're done with that one, we're going to start one for Where is Sarah Ebersol? So those are kind of our projects right now on the side, and I'll keep updating you all on my Facebook and on my Twitter X. Thank you all for being part of Social Change Warriors tonight, and for our meeting with Mizzy about the life and death, tragic death of Sandra Birchmore and her baby. Good night, everyone. Take care of yourselves. Be safe. And I hope you'll join me again. And I hope you will continue to follow Mizzy and her quest for justice for Sandra Birchmore.
They try to silence the truth we shout, but we're still here, we're still calling out. Corruption hides behind a badge of name. We light the fire, expose the shame. We're justice seekers, we'll fight the fight for every voice lost in the night. My life matters is the cry we sing for the ones they tried to bury within. It's just us, we're a movement wide. Together we rise, won't run nor hide. The stories echo, the pain runs deep. For stolen lives we can't just weep. Elected power, but their hearts are cold. We'll bring the truth, let it be told. We're justice seekers, we'll fight the fight for every voice lost in the night. My life matters is the cry we sing for the ones they try to bury within. It's just us, we're a movement wide. Together we rise, won't run nor hide. We're justice seekers, we'll fight the fight for heroes, undo the harm. Calling out corruption, we'll stand tall for justice and truth, we'll risk it all.